Welcome to MOT Today. I am your co-host, Luis Acevedo, and Mick will be here momentarily. He's running a little behind, but we decided to get the stream started right at 12:30 as we planned. So we will be diving into the meat of it when Mick gets here to start things off. We're still kind of getting the show ready here. Got to pull up some articles that we're going to reference throughout the show. And yeah, it should be a really good one. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. And yeah, it should be really good. So as you can see, we won the appeal because we were recently banned from TikTok to do lives from our stream on, what was it, yesterday? A couple days ago? Actually, 2 days ago, we were kicked off of doing a live stream, and then we had to hop on our backup channel to do the live stream, and then we got kicked off of that one as well. So here we are, back at it, not stopping. We won the appeal, as I knew we would, because we ended up getting kicked off due to me talking about theology, which was a little insane. And yeah, I mean, this is just the world that we're living in today, right? I mean, censorship is everywhere. It's running rampant. And we just got to kind of deal with it. There's not much that we can do aside from just moving on. Obviously, there's building other platforms. We actually have a pretty cool idea that we want to try and do, and that involves NFTs. And basically, the idea is with NFTs, we would be able to become more censorship resistant, because the main purpose of a blockchain is to be censorship resistant. It's decentralized. So we figured that news organizations, media, etc., that are more controversial will find a pretty useful use case in NFTs, because you would then be able to disseminate information without being censored. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what we want to do. And right now it's very hard to speak truth without being censored. But that's one of the goals that we have here, is to build up this NFT project, which is also one of the reasons why you would consider supporting via the Cash App. Another thing that we're trying to do as well, we're trying to get some political illustrations out. We're trying, we have a lot of things in the work here, a lot more interviews that we have to get lined up. It's a lot of work doing all of this. So, and right now we do it all for free. We make a little money off of what people want to offer us on TikTok and the Creator Fund on another account that we have. But other than that, we don't generate much money for this, and we want to make sure that we can provide you guys good quality news. Good quality news is the goal here. And yeah, so let's see. Born Again Christian is a dystopian death cult. I totally disagree. I think that Christianity is a beautiful religion. It has a lot of truth, and it provides a good framework in order to foster a good moral society and civilization. All civilizations have had a religion that has been their framework, and Christianity, in my opinion, has come up with the best civilizations that we've ever witnessed, and they've used the Christian framework. Jews also have a good framework, as do Islam. And I don't know what you mean by end. All civilizations end over time. This is true if that's what you're referring to. But yeah, so this is something that anybody who studies history for any amount of time comes to the conclusion that religions are necessary in order to have a civilization. It's just so obvious. I don't know how more people are unaware of that, and they think that being atheist is good. What do you think Jesus' favorite gun was? I'm guessing his least favorite gun was a nail gun. I've heard that one before. Yeah, that's a good one. It's not as funny the second time around, but yeah, I get it because he's a carpenter. Yeah, it's a good one. Poem to self. Nailed it. Yeah, yeah. Lol, lol, with the puns. We got some comics in the show tonight, or today rather. Oh, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. You know, that's pretty cool. Define religion. Can't wait for Armageddon. I can wait for Armageddon. I don't think any sane Christian is looking forward to that day. A religion is a belief. I mean, we'll look up the actual. We'll look up the religion definition right now. So it's the belief or worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. Also, it's a particular faith, a system of faith and worship. It's also a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. So that's what an original religion is. What's the difference between Jesus and a picture of Jesus? Only takes one nail to good one. You against God's will. Not funny, honestly. I don't know what the A and C is. You against God's will. I don't know what you mean by that. I think that life is much easier when you're going with God's will, because God's will is the natural law of things. We can obviously observe natural laws, and then we can extrapolate and determine that we have laws that govern ourselves and follow those laws. Am I against Armageddon? I never said I'm against Armageddon. I just said I'm not looking forward to it. There's a big difference between looking forward to something and being against it. There is no God. We evolved. Well, we've spiritually evolved. We've consciously evolved, and there provably, logically is a God. People hating on someone they don't even believe in are called tweakers. Yeah. Good luck with that, sir. Study biology, evolution, and Earth history. I have. And evolution is a fraud. It is a theory. It's a philosophy. It's a belief system. It is not something that is provable on a macro scale. When has there ever been bacteria in a lab that have evolved from 1 cell to 2 cell to 3 cell to 4, etc.? Right? The only provable God, it's proven. It's not proven. Provable God is very logical. If you just look at the universe, there has to be a first mover. There has to be order. If there is no order, well, then you can't form sentences. You can't think coherently. You can't have society. You can't have organization. So there has to be an order. And where does that order come from? That order comes from the first mover. Additionally, something else that you can consider as proof is energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred, right? And so if energy can't be created or destroyed, Mick is here, by the way. What's going on, Mick? Dad tried.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. So right now we're getting a little into theology. So yeah, so if energy can't be created or destroyed, it has to come from somewhere. You're full of logical fallacies. Incorrect. You're just throwing out BS. You're not even coming up with arguments. You're just saying that these are logical fallacies. These are not logical fallacies. There's many of philosophers and theologians that are much smarter than me who have used this logical sequence in which I'm using right now. And so, for instance, energy can't be created or destroyed. So where does energy come? So energy, therefore, is eternal. It's forever in existence. And so what else is forever in existence? God. And so who would be delineating, where would the energy be coming from? It's coming from God or the universe or nature, whatever you want to call it. But that force is what we who are religious would consider God. And so since energy doesn't get created or destroyed and you are full of energy, where do you go when you die? Well, you don't die technically. Your energy is transferred somewhere else. So it's very logical and consistent that there is a God. Christianity is a monotheistic fairy tale. I totally disagree with that. I mean, I think polytheism is more so fairy tale-ish and insane.
So were we talking about the article you sent me about?
No, we're not talking about that at all right now. They're just asking questions. So if energy is God, then God is simply the capacity to perform an action and personal doesn't act. No, I mean, let's see. So God is simply the capacity to perform action. So yes, there is action. There is a personal and impersonal aspect of God. And you just said doesn't act, but he just says perform action. So I think you just contradicted yourself in there. But yeah, God is the source of energy.
You guys are just talking about random philosophy.
I don't know. They just
something about
come in here
God
trolling.
and energy.
The Supreme Court ruled that evolution is true and it's taught in schools.
Did they?
That, I don't even know that that's true to begin with, but even if they did rule that it's true, it doesn't mean that it is true. It is a theory. You understand that, right?
The Supreme Court can't rule if something's true, right? I mean, they're
Exactly.
not the arbiter of truth.
Exactly. And there is like, it makes no sense. So like the complexity of an eyeball doesn't make sense that it would evolve over time. Like I believe in natural selection. I believe in speciation. I believe in adaptation. All those things are provable, factual, but macro evolution is not. Our entire existence may only be a virtual reality program. Yeah, some people think that we live in the mind of God. I tend to agree with that. Well, love your content, Mom. Thank you very much, Uptown.
Yeah, I mean, humans have almost gotten to the place where we can create life. Like, so why would people think that it's not possible that God could create life?
Exactly. I mean, we can make clones in a lab. So I mean, you can just extrapolate from the capabilities that we have. Hello from Ice Walls. I don't even.
We're getting trolled.
We're getting trolled, yeah, for sure. Humans have been able to create life since the first humans. If we don't sin, Jesus died for nothing. God is just a name. I agree with that. God is just a name. And
there's different names. Too.
Exactly. Humans have been able to create life since the first humans. Yeah, 100%. If we don't sin, Jesus died for nothing. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I have a totally different view on Christianity than most Christians do. I think that we can all die for each other's sins. I think that Jesus was the epitome of the perfect human being and what we should aim for as humans. I don't think that Jesus dying for our sins absolves and is done for nothing if we commit sins. No, I think that Jesus was showing us how to live a perfect life and to reconnect with the Creator. Because, Jesus is even stated in the Bible that he wants us to be one with the Father as he is, and that we are all children of God, and that we are his brothers and sisters, those who follow him. So, and he also said that we can do better things than him. So,
like have children.
Right. Well, I think, there's schizophrenics wrote the Bible.
Yeah, like, you were going to say something about Jesus having kids or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jesus probably had kids. Jesus was pro-abortion and anti-public prayer. I don't know that he was pro-abortion. I don't know. I mean, where are you getting your information from on that? And as far as public prayer, there is a truth to what you're saying, because the Big Bang happened, religion denied it. Now they say God created the Big Bang to tell their story. No, the Big Bang keeps changing over time as well. You have to understand that your scientific narrative is purely religion belief, religious based. You know that 2/3 of all studies in science are not reproducible. It's called the reproducibility crisis in science. So 66% of all of your information from science is not provable. It is false. And Big Bang is also just a theory. It is not a fact. They don't know how big the universe is. They don't know if it's contracting or expanding. We don't know how old the universe is either. Some people say it's 13 billion years. Others say it's billions of years. The Big Bang happened and it's provable. You're not even giving me a logical argument for it. I'm over here giving you logical arguments, and you're just saying that it's this and it's that. No, it is not provable, and it is not. It is simply a theory. We know it's expanding. False. Neil deGrasse Tyson, the other Asian dude, I can't remember his name, Haku or some crap. They and others state that we don't know if it's contracting or expanding, because it can end up in a blaze or it can end up freezing us all if it continuously expands. And we don't even know that the universe is infinite. We don't even know how old the universe is. We don't even know how old the Earth is. All these things change over time. It's expanding at an accelerating rate due to dark energy. Dark energy isn't even proven. It's a theory. Everything you're saying is hypotheticals or theories. It proves nothing. We know how old it is. We don't know how old it is. It keeps changing over time. This is all very provable. Jesus didn't have to have faith that God existed. Everyone is expected to. Okay. Jesus was, getting back to the public prayer of Jesus. So there is some truth in that, because, You're not supposed to be praying to be like, oh, I'm a good person. Everybody look at me. I'm praying. That's what Jesus was talking about. But as far as having public prayer, I don't think it's wrong. I mean, Jesus taught his disciples how to pray. Therefore, I mean, he was in a public setting when they all witnessed him prayer. So it's not that public praying is bad. To be clear, no proper scientist says science proves anything. The data supports an outcome. LOL, but God isn't a theory. God isn't a theory. It's very provable that there's a first mover. If there wasn't a first mover, then we would just have a chaotic world. And if we have a chaotic world, everything I'm saying to you would be absolutely meaningless. This is a philosophical truth.
Wait, we don't live in a chaotic world?
No, we don't. I think that we live in a very orderly world. Do you think the earth is flat too? I don't know what the earth is, to be honest with you. So are you saying the Bible is proven? That's not what I'm saying. His name wasn't Jesus. You call him Christ because Christ is a spiritual attainment. I agree with that statement that Christ is a spiritual attainment. Christ means Messiah. I do agree with that. A Christian should really learn the history of their own religion. Yeah, I do agree with that statement as well. A lot of Christians are ignorant to it. Leftists don't attack PC. Yep. So, yeah, I don't know what shape the earth is. Nobody does objectively. I tend to think that I default to saying that we live on a plane of existence, and there's multiple dimensions. But I don't know what the earth is. If the earth is flat, why does the light stop halfway across the earth? I don't know. I mean, I know there's one argument that the flat earthers use that's really good, I think, regarding boats going over the horizon. When they say that, the boats, when they're going over the horizon, that's going over the curve. But then if you get a telescope or, binoculars, something to enhance your vision, you can then see past the horizon. And now with infrared cameras, you can see 1,000 feet. You can see like thousands of feet ahead, which would be impossible based on the math that is used for the globe Earth. But I'm not here to say whether or not the Earth is flat, whether the Earth is a globe. I'm not, comfortable enough to be in a debate of that kind. I typically think that, like I said, that we are on a plane of existence. I don't know what shape that plane of existence is, but yeah, only hung out with men, wasn't married at 33. That isn't true. There were women disciples. There's a theory that he and Mary Magdalene were married. I tend to agree with that theory. Kabbalah, are the originators, LOL, go back 7,000 years, was nothing to do with Jesus. Okay. I installed industrial microwaves on towers. Your radio and internet cannot work if the earth is flat. Yeah, but then there's some people who suggest that there's a firmament over the earth, which would then allow for radio waves to work and internet to work. And also, most of your internet and radio are coming from towers, not satellites. Satellites don't make any sense to me. I mean, there's a bunch of space junk, and how are there no like in all the satellites that we have seen collapse and come to Earth, they actually have helium balloons. NASA is the biggest buyer of helium. So I don't know. It's very interesting. My IQ is getting lower just being here. Then leave. Nobody needs you here.
Yeah, I'm not totally against the whole flat Earth thing. I don't know. I'm just very open to a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm very open-minded. Like, this is the thing here. We are just searching for truth. That's all. Like, if like there's provable evidence that the Earth is a globe, I have no issue believing that.
I love the idea of space.
Yeah, I mean, space is a cool idea. I used to be very infatuated with us becoming space dwelling beings, but now I don't know that that's possible. Married to Mary Magdalene was in the book of Judas. Christians don't recognize that book. See, you guys are lumping all Christians together. You know that there are many other Christians, right? I consider myself a Christian, and I think that that's true. There is proof. I'm in the exact place you are at. Thank you. Gravity proven? No, it isn't proves it. Gravity is a theory. Gravity is nothing but a theory. And also it says space-time bends. What physical property does space have that can bend? That doesn't make any sense to me. Try taking some science classes. I have taken many of science classes. I've done pretty well in science, actually. I question everything. I'm just questioning. Like, and people get very emotional to these arguments too. So that to me shows that there's some kind of spellcraft behind globe Earth, flat Earth, because people get too emotional behind it. They begin to default to just emotions as opposed to logic and actually asking these questions.
Yeah.
So do you think the world is flat? I just said I don't know what shape the world is. There's a difference between a theory and a scientific theory. No, there's still theories. It doesn't make sense to you. That means it must not be true. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. Just because it doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean it's wrong. I know. You're right. We could be traveling to another star system as we speak with our real bodies status. I don't know. It's definitely a theory like most things. There's gigantic difference. A theory is a theory. A theory is a theory. I mean, you can word it how you want to, but a theory is a theory. A theory is not factual. A theory is not something that's a law. It's still different from a law. And just because you have a scientific theory, it just means that you have, and also it's evidence. Like a theory is different than a hypothesis. A hypothesis is something that you are just inferring based on what you know, but are based on what you believe. And then you hypothesize that, and then you do tests to then see if that hypothesis stands. And if you do tests that then prove that hypothesis to stand somewhat, you then have a theory. So that's a theory. A theory has some evidence to suggest that it may be true, but it isn't enough to call it a law or a fact. Only fact proven chubby chicks try harder. You have evidence against gravity. I don't need to prove. I mean, there's no evidence. I mean, the other argument is that there's buoyancy. That's the other argument that I've heard. Magnetism is another argument. So these are all theories. These are all theories. Do you think drinks too much milk? Please open a dictionary and read definition of a scientific theory. I just explained to you what a theory is. I'm well aware of what a scientific theory is. I've just explained how you go from a hypothesis to a theory. But just because something's a theory or a scientific theory doesn't mean that it's law, doesn't mean that it's set in stone, it doesn't mean that it's fact, it doesn't mean that it's true. LOL, do those have any substantial evidence? I don't know what you're talking about. Did flat Earth versus round Earth made it to other debates? I don't know what that is. You're just saying that, well, people think this too. So yeah, because there's other scientific evidence. There's like science is real. The scientific method is real. Scientific observations are real. But then you have to understand that the mainstream science, which everybody wants to ignore, 66% of everything coming out of the mainstream scientific study academia is false. 66%. It's called the reproducibility crisis. We have an idea and substantial evidence of gravity, but that's exactly what I just said. You guys are a bunch of retards in the comment section. I'm literally describing this to you guys, and you guys are over here regurgitating what I just said.
Yeah, they're just ideas.
Yeah, science
is the flat Earth and the round Earth are both just scientific arguments against each other.
Exactly.
And people are arguing as to which one's true because they're saying that no, mine's right, and the reality is that nobody really knows.
Exactly. They still operate exactly as described. They don't. There's other theories to prove how seasons take place. There's other theories. Like this is what I'm saying, being open-minded. Because if there's other things that have accurate predictive models that are outside of the globe model, well, then that means that there's some truth in what they're saying. It doesn't mean that the Earth is flat. It doesn't mean that we have an ice wall. It doesn't mean any of that. It just simply means that there are other competing theories out there. And if you don't understand the fact that the mainstream science and the mainstream media prevents you from thinking outside of the box, then you're going to be falling for these traps forever. Science is real, but you still just believe whatever you like. I've already admitted that science is real. You're not paying attention. Some things can't and won't be proven. They operate exactly as described. I already addressed that. I live in Oklahoma. It seems pretty flat here. Right. I mean, when we look at the Earth looks like it's a horizon, like it's just a constant horizon. And horizons are, it's interesting.
Well, that one guy was saying, I don't know who it was, but they said science is real, but you still believe what you believe. Well, exactly. That's whatever.
Yeah. And then we have another comment here. What makes you qualified to say what science is false? The fact that there is actual data stating that 66% of all scientific studies in modern academia cannot be reproduced. Therefore, they are not true. No, you don't need a PhD to do that. As a matter of fact, you're probably more brainwashed if you have a PhD. Professor Dave is a clown. I totally agree with that. I actually just watched Professor Dave and Dave Weiss have a debate on flat Earth versus globe Earth. And let me tell you, I have no respect for Professor Dave. He's condescending and very close-minded. Nobody really knows, so that means let me go back. I'm trying to get to everybody's question here. Nobody really knows, so that means anything could be possible. It could be a giant. No, that's not true. There are things that are objectively true. The sun rises in the morning, sets in the evening. The moon rises in the evening, sets in the morning. Also, there's 4 seasons. There are things that are objectively true. Name one other theory. The flat Earth theory. There's also the theory of Middle Earth, that we live in Middle Earth. Like there's a bunch of other theories that make a lot of sense. Equally plausible, LOL. There's an apple up in the air. What's going to bring it down? I don't know. Some people say it's buoyancy. Some people say it's magnetism. Some people say it's electricity. There's other theories outside of gravity. That's the only thing I'm trying to say here. Now we're on the MSM. No, what's your degree? I have a couple different degrees. I have one in applied science. I have one in diesel technology. And then I was going for my history degree. I had a opportunity going to Case Western University here, but then I was going to law school. That was going to be the plan, and then I ended up dropping out because I was debt free, and I realized that getting in crippling debt was stupid, and the smarter thing to do would be to thank you. Happy Father's Day to you too, D-Lac. That the smarter thing to do would be to just simply work and start businesses and stuff. You missed the second half of the sentence, Chow. Equating the theory of buoyancy with the theory of gravity, LOL, and you think that's justified? 100%, because there's no, so once again, gravity comes from space bending. So the masses of objects in space bending. But what physical property does space have to bend? And how do you bend a vacuum? Teach me how to Dougie, but who's Dougie? And what does he make from it? Show your source. Just look it up. Just look it up. Nothing makes him qualified. He just wants the attention. Gravity can't be reproduced. Well, we don't know what actually gravity is. Weird how gravity works objectively as described, right? But buoyancy works as described as well, too, right? Like, I don't know. Bill Nye the Science Guys love chubby chicks on flat. 66% source. What is it? Just look it up. It's called the reproducibility crisis. It's not hard, guys. You guys are all on the internet right now. This is also another thing that most people need to be aware of. When idiots are asking you, what is your source? You know what you need to tell them? Just look it up. Just do your own research. Because I've learned throughout my time of debating people online and having discussions with people in real life, regardless of what source I provide, regardless of what evidence I provide, if it goes against their belief system, they're going to totally disregard it. So you do your own research. Flat Earth is not a theory. It's a disproven claim. False. It is a actual theory that disproves some of the arguments for the globe Earth. But once again, we're not here stating that globe Earth is real or that flat Earth is real. We're here basically saying there's a lot of questions to be had and it's fun to explore. I don't know why so many people are afraid to explore. Like, just explore ideas. Have fun. This is part of intellect. This is part of being intelligent, is not being afraid of listening to ideas you may not agree with, and then hearing the logic from that and the truth from that, and then scraping that off, and then seeing how that can fit into your model, however you want it.
People are afraid of having interesting conversations. All they want to talk about is like what's going on, like in entertainment or sports games,
right?
Like that. Like, people are afraid of in-depth conversations in philosophy, really.
100%. Conspiracy theory is not the same as scientific theory. Well, they're both theories. So a conspiracy just means that there's 2 or more people coming together behind closed doors to orchestrate a plan. The American Revolution was a conspiracy theory. Okay, they were conspiring to overthrow the British government. So
I thought that the difference would just be like a conspiracy they haven't done the scientific research yet. They're just like conspiring.
No, but they're 2 different fields. So I mean, you can even have There's a conspiracy. There's conspiracies in the scientific.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it does. It sounds like it starts as a conspiracy theory, and then they do some research. Like gravity may have started out as a conspiracy theory, and then now it's a scientific theory because some people researched it.
Right. So, and then we got DLAC here on YouTube saying we're in a dome. That's why rainbows reflect the way they do. I tend to believe like there's Operation Fishbowl where the government they found the dome in Antarctica and they attempted to shoot missiles at the dome to pierce it and they failed. This is all provable. This is like all like government documents. It's called Operation Fishbowl. Books have been removed from the original Bible. Should they be put back in? Arguable. I mean, well, first off, if you go to an Orthodox or a Catholic church, all those books are back in the Bible. It's only the Protestants that removed the books.
So they weren't all destroyed in the Library of Alexandria?
I mean, there's other like books that the Catholics and Orthodox say that aren't in the Bible, but there's like 7 to 14 books that are back in the Catholic Bible and the Orthodox Bible. The Orthodox Bible actually has, I think, another book that the Catholics don't. I think the Orthodox Bible, or the Coptic Bible rather, includes the book of Elijah or the book of Enoch. So you flunked out of college? No, I passed college. I did well in college. I did very well in college. I actually got, I got offered scholarships and stuff. I did really well. Let's see what else we got going on here. My source is a 15-year-old book based on hearsay. That's not my source. I've never once said that that's my source. My source comes from Joe Rogan. That's what a lot of people say. Put your source on the screen or quit clowning. No, you do your own research. You have an internet. The reproducibility crisis, something that nobody is talking about. Religion have lowered people IQ. That's why they're so gullible. Many studies. False. There's actually studies to prove to the contrary to that as well. Yeah. Professor Dr. Edward Dunton has disproven that claim.
The reason why mainstream media is so popular is because you don't have to do research because they just tell you what to think.
100%. It tells you how to think. I looked it up. It says it's round. Cool. I mean, yeah, that's what you're going to find.
Yeah. I think you have to look past the first thing that pops up.
And you also have to explore the flat Earth argument and not get emotional about it and see why they believe what they believe. Operation Fishbowl is a legit thing.
I'd be interested to see what pops up when you type in flat Earth on Google. I bet the first thing that pops up is just something saying that it's not true.
Yeah, there's a Wikipedia page for it. So you have to skip the first 14 pages of Google.
No, that's
maybe
what said.
Yeah, shouldn't be able to deny your child health care for religious reasons. Yeah, so we can talk about that article. So there is a law that was passed in South Carolina for everybody on YouTube and stuff. I'll share it with you guys, and then everybody else. You're just going to have to listen to me read. So let's pull this up here. Let's move this over.
Google was, from Wikipedia, it says the flat Earth model is an archaic and scientifically disproven conception of Earth's shape as a plane or disk.
Right.
Which, obviously, that's the first thing.
Right. So we got, hang on, let me see what this question is here. It says, liberals will call something conservatives are talking about a conspiracy theory until 2 years later when, news say it's real, and now they act like they knew it the whole time. 100% agree with that statement, but conservatives do the same thing too. I'm not too partial to conservatives. I think that conservatives are very weak. Read. You read because some can't. Exactly. That's why I read. South Carolina example. I don't know what example of what. Oh, of theories. I mean, like the. There's a lot. There's so many. Everybody's talking about the child stuff, the children stuff, the children predator stuff. I don't know how much I can say here with Epstein. Many truthers like myself had been talking about that for years, many of years. And now everybody's on that same wave. Also, what happened in September a few years ago. But anyway. What do you mean, like doctors shouldn't be allowed to deny someone health care? Yeah, so this is where we're going into. Everyone knew about that for decades. Not everyone. I mean, ABC covered that up for a long time, and the mainstream media covered it up for a long time. So that's what he's referring to. So right here, so it says South Carolina governor will sign a bill allowing medical providers to deny care based on beliefs. Now, it is called the Medical Ethic and Diversity Act. And basically, what it would allow for is doctors to refuse to do abortions, to prescribe birth control pills, medication to prevent HIV, and let's see. This bill does not allow practitioners to refuse care to a patient based on race, and it also doesn't mean that isn't something that the conservatives were right about and the liberals came down to. You didn't prove this point. Man, people can't think. No, you're absolutely right. A lot of which is why I said what I said, that conservatives fall for this too, and that liberals fall for this too. So it's not like I don't agree with the whole left-right paradigm. I think that we both agree that they're birds of the same feather. I mean, they're wings of the same bird. So I think overall, conspiracy theories, a lot of them are false, but there's a good portion of them that are true, and the establishment as a whole attempts to prevent the true ones from being revealed. I mean, chemtrails, for example, have now been admitted by the government to be a legit thing. But for a long time, they were under wraps, and a lot of people were going against that. So I totally agree with you that conservatives and liberals, as I mentioned before, so I mean, you're saying people can't think. I'm going to say that people don't listen.
So this article is basically, so what is this like getting at? They're getting at that doctors shouldn't have to perform abortions if they're against it. Is this pretty much what they're getting at here? Oh, okay.
Yes, and it also says that that they would have the right to not do any kind of not recommend any kind of psychological therapy or counseling. As the government gets more corrupt, our conspiracies aren't just theories. Yeah, as for an example of something that was right, the right was correct about that the left wanted to hide eventually came around to, there was none. Yeah, so I mean, you could look at the Hunter Biden issue. You could look at the whole, well, actually, I don't know much about what conservatives have been right about, but conservatives have been right on some things, and like the whole Hunter Biden issue, that's one thing that a lot of people deny. But once again, I'm not over here defending conservatism at all. I think that conservatism is an idiotic belief. Hunter is just an artist. Which big corporations are you voting for in 2024?
Well, you said you think conservatism is an idiotic belief?
Yes, 100%. Because it doesn't stand.
You identify more as a conservative.
No, I never said that. I identify more with the right-wing political spectrum. But I do not agree with conservatism at all. I think conservatism is they can't even conserve the girls' bathroom. They don't stand for anything. They are spineless, weak.
Well, but like
the idea of conservatism was created by weak individuals to slowly subvert the population to leftist thinking. Fact.
Well, I mean, the way conservatism is actually, but the idea of conservatism, I swear I thought you said that you think that the ideas of actual conservatism are good.
No, and if I did say that, I misspoke, because I definitely do not believe in conservatism. Conservatism is literally the fear of change and progress. Well, it's not so much that not changing is a bad thing, and it's not so much that progress is progress. Also, why they're mostly religious, also why the political educational map is skewed in favor of the left. Well, a lot of people that go through the educational system are just brainwashed sheep. So I've been in the education system for a long time. I know a lot of other people who've been in the education system for a long time, and we all agree that we've learned more outside of the educational system. And the educational system, especially when you get into higher learning, doesn't really teach you how to think critically. As we're exploring here, when we're talking about different theories of flat Earth, globe Earth, why is one right? Why is the other wrong? What are some evidence to suggest that one's right and the other one's wrong? A lot of people can't explore those ideas. And a lot of people come up in the educational system, and they are stunted in, I think, growth.
So you, in school they're not even going to like give you the option to explore those ideas.
Right.
But I had another thing about the conservative liberal thing. So like, so you don't identify as conservative or liberal. I mean, I thought you had to choose one.
No, you don't.
Or there's some other, what's the other
No,
thing?
like I've stated on the stream multiple times, if I had to identify myself with any sort of political movement, it would be Christian nationalism or Christian tribalism. That's how I would then identify my particular political belief. But yeah, that idea that you have to be a liberal or a conservative is a false binary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with that either. I find myself somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So like, I haven't came up with a name for it. I mean, I've never even really heard that before. But I mean, it's just a combination of words, and you can kind of assume what it means.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would identify as independent, or I just independently think, I guess.
Cannot be constitutional. Is you okay with that? Yeah, I'm not. I think the Constitution is good and all, but I don't think the Constitution is absolute. 100%. I don't think that the Constitution was absolute, and a lot of people are unaware of the fact that the people who wrote the Constitution were a bunch of Freemasons. I'm in university, and I feel like everyone is challenging geopolitical issues now. Yeah, in what way though? Like in what way? And historical narratives. Yeah, Christian nationalists. Yeah, that's what I would say. That's what I would consider myself. Or a tribalist, Christian tribalist or Christian nationalist. I'm not sure what word would be better in order to suit my political view. And I also believe in what are the Freemasons exactly? LOL. Well, Freemasons were originally they were bricklayers. They were like Masons. They were bricklayers. Fascist works. Yeah, I mean, we do live in a fascist country. I agree with you 110% there. People are fearful of communism, but actually what we have right now is fascism, and that's objectively true. I'm just making a broad assembly if this generation's open-mindedness. Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, so Freemasons started off as actual Masons, like stone workers, bricklayers, etc. And then it morphed into a secret society of this belief system where the G, right, is God. But you can come in there with any religious belief that you have, and then it'll conform under the Freemason belief system. I haven't read the Freemason Bible or anything. I don't think many people have. I think it's relatively hard to get your hands on. So from what I understand of Freemasonry is what I just explained to you. It's the belief basically in freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and the ability to have all religions come into one, whether it's Luciferianism, Satanism, Christianity, Islam. They could all work together in the Freemason belief. Nationalists sound violent, man. Why is the G inside of the Star of David? That's a really good question too.
There's a G.
Yeah.
There's a letter G inside of it.
Yeah, for the Freemasons.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's like the Star of David is Jewish and the Freemasons, so we all know that the big nose, small hats are up to stuff. We all know that.
So the article, I mean, like what you wanted to share.
Yeah, so this article here is basically giving the doctors the right to refuse care based on their religious beliefs on abortion, birth control, psychological or counseling.
Has it become law?
No, but it's he's set to sign it, the governor. So it's passed both houses. It looks like. Why they're up to stuff? What stuff? And let me just clarify this right now. So I am being comical when I talk about the big nose and small hats, but there are a lot of big. Happy Father's Day. Yep, Happy Father's Day. And mothers are awesome. But anyway. So a lot of them own Hollywood, like a lot of them are behind Hollywood productions. A lot of them are in the financial system. So there's, a lot of people who believe that they are the controllers of the world and that they are pulling the strings financially, and then are the ones that are disseminating propaganda and the woke agenda that we see. But I'm not saying that I align with that thinking, because there's many other people. I get the idea of cameras, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll get into that article too in a second. But there's many other fractions of groups that control the financial systems. Don't Christians run your country? No, they don't. We're back to people believe, because you have to understand that belief is the most powerful thing that we have. We don't know very much of anything. We don't. The The protocols, yeah. So there's the protocols, but I'm trying to explain to you, like, this is provable that there are a bunch of big nose, small hats all over the financial world, all over the presidential cabinets, both Biden and Trump. There's a bunch of them in Hollywood. There's a bunch of them that are in a lot of positions of power and influence, which is where these theories derive from. And there's also the fact that they have been kicked out of multiple countries, like 117 countries or something. Belief is only more powerful than action in a philosophical sense.
What was the question?
It wasn't a question, it was a statement.
Oh.
It was belief is only more powerful than action in a philosophical sense. Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I would have to agree with that.
Affect your actions.
This is true, but your actions are ultimately more important than your beliefs.
Yeah,
100%.
But they go hand in hand.
They do.
If you were like brain dead and you didn't have any beliefs, then you wouldn't be performing very many actions.
Right. So as far as this bill goes in South Carolina, I don't really. You don't know to believe something for it to work. You don't have to believe something for it to work. Exactly, I agree with that, because you can know something will work. Like, for instance, I know the scientific method is 100% legit. I know that observational science is 100% legit. I know that the sun comes up every morning. I know that the moon comes up every evening. I know that there's 4 seasons where I live, and there's 4 seasons across the world. I know those things. So you don't have to believe something at all, because there's things that are knowable 100%. I do believe in an objective reality. I don't believe in relativism. You sound extremely. I'm not. I'm really not. I'm really not.
You sound extremely what?
I'm not going to repeat it. You don't have to know something will work for it to work either. Those are called experiments. I 100% agree with what you're saying. 100%. That's a 5-head if I've ever seen one.
You don't want to say that.
Yeah. No, I don't. I'm not at all. I'm very. There's a lot of Jewish traits that I much appreciate. For instance, their ability to remain tribal, which is where I sort of get my idea of Christian tribalism, right?
They're very family oriented. It seems like
they are.
They have traditions that they like to carry on, whereas a lot of Americans don't even like have traditions. They don't really care. I think having 100%. Traditions really, people who have traditions seem to be more like rooted in morality because they're more family oriented and stuff. Traditions kind of bring families together.
100%. Christians should know Jewish history. If they don't, they have no context for their own religion. Yeah, in a way, but there is, an argument to be had that Christians have always been around, and therefore should know the history of. Yeah, I agree with that as well. Like we're on 100% agreement that I think that all Christians should know Jewish history, Kabbalah history. 100%. I'm with you. But I don't agree with the term Judeo-Christian. I think that you're just a Christian. Traditions don't equal morality. I usually find they mean the opposite. Not necessarily true. But you are correct. Yes, that is logical. Traditions don't equal morality, but I don't think that they're aiming at morality with their traditions. I think they're trying to have a cohesive family, cohesive society, and traditions allow people to reconnect with that. And then morality can derive from it, but you are right, it doesn't equal it. You were going to have to.
You personally, I know that you're Christian. I'm not very religious. We've been praying and stuff. I'm trying to get into it more. Mm-hmm. But anyway, you personally, you're Christian. You have your own kind of form of Christianity. So, are you going to allow your kids to explore other religions?
100%. I did.
Yeah,
I did. Yeah, 100%. I have nothing wrong with exploring other religions. I have nothing against other religions. I think that religions are hierarchical. So, in my opinion,
I just want to know because, some people probably wouldn't even let their kids look into other religions.
No, I have no issue with that. I would let
as a religious person, I just wanted to know your opinion on that.
I would let my children read the book of Satanism. I would let my children read any books on Buddha, any books on Hinduism.
Well, the other day you said on the live stream that you wouldn't
allow. No, I would not allow somebody to come into
in
my
here and
house.
try to teach you.
Yeah, no, that's totally different. But if my children were interested and they wanted to look into it more, I 100% agree with that. I think the literal interpretation has destroyed Christianity. It is. I 100% agree with you. I couldn't agree more. The literal interpretation of the Bible. I 100% agree with you, because even in the Bible, Paul says that like this story of Abraham and Sarah is allegorical. It isn't like to be taken literally.
It's kind of like the mainstream media. Like if you just read the Bible for face value, then like and you don't put any thought behind it, then it's just kind of like the mainstream media where they just tell you what to believe.
100%. Then we got Tito in here saying Protestant Catholics are where it's at. He's an idiot. I think religion in general is quite illogical. Well, it's because that you have a distorted view of religion. Religion itself is very beautiful and logical. There's a lot of order in religion. What religion are you? I would consider myself a Christian, more so leaning towards Orthodox Christianity.
I mean, that comes back to the whole thing about traditions. The order.
Yeah. Christian conqueror, right? Let's see. Yeah, so as far as this bill goes, I think that there's religion is a crutch for the weak. 100% false. You can't have civilization without religion. That's provable. It's provable. Like every civilization has had a religion that has been their framework. Every one. Yeah, it is very important.
People go to church on Sundays. It like gives people meaning. It like those traditions. It like gathers people together. I mean, what's the alternative? Just sit on your ass and watch football.
Right, and it's
which one provides a little bit more meaning. And I like football, so
yeah, 100%. And there's nothing wrong with what you know. What I don't necessarily agree with churches. I don't get along with churches very much. The Orthodox still believe the literal Jesus. Do you have any idea where he spent those missing 20 years? That's a very good question. I've explored that quite a bit.
What 20 years?
Well, because you only see Jesus in the Bible when he was 12 and then when he was 30. And so there's a huge gap.
Yeah, I think I heard about that.
So,
that's crazy.
I don't know. I really don't know.
It doesn't say anything in the Bible about
No, it doesn't. I tend to think that he went with, there's this tribe of Jew. I can't remember their name right now. It flees me. But I tend to think that he went with this mystical tribe of Jews. People say India, but I think that it would be more coherent if he would have resided closer to where he's at. And he went with these mystical tribe of Jews.
Maybe he went to heaven. Did he not say anything in the book about where he was? Like there's just
no.
Nobody asked him in the book or nothing?
Maybe they did, but they could have been removed. The Bible has been around for thousands of years, and humans are the ones writing it. So
does it even like reference? I mean, it obviously references his age. So like, were people surprised that were they waiting for him or?
Yeah, I mean, some people were. Maybe when America Falls. Let me get to some of these comments on YouTube really quick, guys. Have you seen Adam Green's take on? No, I haven't. When America falls, these anti-religious people will switch up. I 100% agree with that. 100%. So religion is the downfall. No, religion is the framework in which civilizations come from. All the science that is like provable and real comes from mostly Christians in the Catholic Church. Now, I'm not saying I agree with the Catholic Church. And then as far as, let's see here, it says religion is a source of misogyny, etc., and based entirely on fear. 100% false. I mean, not 100% false. There's nothing wrong with the M word that you said. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's very natural. People in China claim Jesus was there for a period of time as well. Yeah, I've heard that as well.
He was going for like 20-something years. He could have been, especially if they had those flying chariots, man, he could have went all over the place.
Jesus was a Roman weapon of war. Well, there is an interesting theory that Jason Reza Georgiani, he's a professor. I think he taught at the New York University of New York, or I'm sorry, some institute for science in New York. And he said that Christianity came about at the same time that the Persian Empire was approaching on the Romans, and the Persian Empire believed in Mithraism. And so this is where some people theorize that Mithraism and Christianity merged, because there's a lot of the similar traditions in Mithraism as there is in Christianity. And that the Roman Empire saw that Christianity would be their way out using Christianity. Yeah.
Whenever I heard that comment, it made me think that they said that Jesus was used as a weapon of war I was imagining Jesus like using his superpowers and shit to like, because there was a crusade, right? Was that around the same time of Jesus? The Crusades?
No.
Oh, really?
They were much later. Yeah, so when I look up the definition, ingrained prejudice against women, there is no, like, okay, so I don't agree with the dislike or contempt for. That's dumb. I have,
What is this?
misogyny. I have 3 daughters. I have a beautiful wife, so I don't agree with that part of it. But yeah, I do think that it's natural to be discriminatory. We do have different characteristics, men and women. We do have different strengths, men and women. We are not equal, men and women are not. And I don't mean that in like a derogatory way whatsoever. I simply mean it in an objective way, on a physiological way. We think differently. We process things differently. And it's beautiful to have that polarity.
Yeah, biologically we're different.
So that's one thing Christianity prevented. They left the feminine out. The Trinity is the Father. I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that. What you know from most Christians is that. But if you actually read the Bible, you see that the Bible refers to wisdom in the Holy Spirit almost as synonymous, and wisdom is always referred to as the feminine. So the Holy Spirit, in my opinion, is a feminine being, in my opinion, based on what the Bible says. So yeah, I do agree with you there, like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I don't even agree with the traditional view of the Trinity. I think that the traditional view of the Trinity is wrong.
Last time we talked about that.
This is true.
We got kicked off twice.
Holy books are full of contradictions and despicable messages. Okay. Let's see. Humanity should evolve beyond the belief of higher power. Well, there is objectively a higher power. Whatever, Jesus is the U.S. Christian weapon of war. Yeah, I do agree that neocons use Christianity as a tool of war. I agree with that 100%. I agree. Right, the Holy Spirit is feminine, but it's never referred to that way directly. Well, you can read the Bible in such a way where you put wisdom and the Holy Spirit together. Like that's where wisdom comes from, is the Holy Spirit, your discernment. In Proverbs, it talks about this a lot. But yes, you are right. It doesn't explicitly refer to it. You are right. I agree. Why should I accept a book that's called for persecution? Well, because it's unnatural, and it's just unnatural. I mean, humans are biologically designed to procreate, as is every other biological being. And the reason for sex is to procreate. Yes, you can have fun, but ultimately the objective is to pass on your genes, and you can't do that as such as what you identify as. So, religion is antiquated. No, it's not.
Well, it's kind of old.
Why are dinosaurs skipped over in the Bible? Well, there's a good theory that dinosaurs aren't even real to begin with. We are only nerves, bones, and flesh. I don't agree with that whatsoever. We are much more than that. That's part of it, but there's much more. There's an energy inside of all of us.
Yeah.
Naturally.
So, did you have anything else about this?
No, we can move on to the next topic here.
Yeah, so I actually sent you an email. I don't know if you're able to pop it up, the article that I sent you, the message I sent you, the email.
This one right here?
Yeah, so this is the next topic. Akron, we live in Northeast Ohio, and Akron is one of the big cities in Northeast Ohio. And Akron is very ghetto.
Let's let Mr. Antichrist
happen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. And
good.
Yourself?
A little hungover. Yeah. So I didn't see it in the prompt here, but I guess you're talking about religion.
Yeah, it came up because of I think the first topic here is religious right to deny health care, specifically on a bill that's going to be passing in South Carolina. But anyway, yes, we have been talking about religion during this stream.
Can I ask what religion you prescribe to? You subscribe to?
Yeah, so I prescribe mostly to Christianity in the Orthodox view of Christianity. I do have my own, I would say my own interpretations of certain things, my own kind of theology, but overall, Orthodox Christianity would describe my theology very well, but it isn't entirely aligned with my theology.
And me, me personally, I'm agnostic. Like, I just don't know yet. I've been like looking into things, and I haven't made a decision yet. I don't know.
Okay, hey, that's good for you. Keep your options open, right?
Right.
So for Orthodox Christianity, you'll have to educate me a little bit. Is there a heaven and a hell for you?
That's kind of a complicated question because there's many different perspectives on so first off, I believe so the Orthodox Christianity view is that there is a hell in that which you're separated from God, but it's not one where everybody is being burnt alive and tortured physically, but on a spiritual level there is this torment that takes place because you're separated from God. And so as far as being in heaven, nobody really knows what heaven is. Nobody really knows what hell is either. But yes, there is a type of heaven. Yes.
Okay, and so there's also then a type of hell, and you don't necessarily think that it's one there where people are being tortured and suffering. You think it's more so just them being separated from God?
Yes, but that does imply suffering.
Sure. So I guess my question is, why do you believe what you believe?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. As far as me personally, I think that it's very obvious that this life isn't it. For instance, we're filled with energy. Energy is very real. We can identify the energy in our body. We emit energy from our body. And energy...
Well, we're moving right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're able to move. We also emit heat, which is a form of energy. That's disgusting. And then there's also... Well, let me just stick with that. So if we have this energy inside of us, energy can't be created or destroyed. Therefore, it was transferred to us at some point in time. And so when we pass, this energy that's inside of us that allows us to do all of these things, it has to be transferred elsewhere since it can't be destroyed. And so from there, I can conclude that there's more than just this physical life, that it is temporal.
It's temporal, over time, right?
Yes, this physical life, yes.
I mean, how does that then get you to God?
Yeah, well, there has to be somebody doing the transitioning of power, of energy, and there has to be a source of energy. And so that source of energy, you can call it God, you can call it nature, you can call it the universe. Many people call it different things, but ultimately, when I say God, that's what I'm describing as. I don't know what God looks like. I don't know what God is. I just know that he's the creator, or it. I won't even assign it a gender, that it is the creator of all things and the first mover of all things. It's what puts order in the universe.
Well, you said that there has to be someone who transitions the energy, from when you die into what's next. I mean, what if God just created this thing and...
Yeah, well, he would have to be the first mover of creating that
he'd be the
system.
first mover, but he
would create the system in what you're describing. So he doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have to transition it personally, but he can create the system in order for that energy to be transferred.
Because what do you think the energy transferring is? Do you think it's just people decompose and turn into a tree or some shit?
I think it's then you go on a spiritual level that you are a soul.
I think there's an issue with it's not necessarily the transfer that's the issue. It's the transcendence from the physical world that we can describe clearly with physics to a world of spirit and a world that's not made out of the same energy that you're discussing. And there's no logical link with what you've said so far that links to the Orthodox Christian view, or the Christian God.
There is actually. There is.
Well, you haven't necessarily made that.
I know, because that's not what I'm making. But then you can't say that what I'm saying isn't logical or consistent when you don't know the Orthodox Christian view, because the Orthodox Christian view specifically talks about these two different kind of energies that I'm referring to.
All right, so walk me through that. Walk me through this the energy that we currently have that can all be explained through physics too.
Yep, and so you can't forget about metaphysics either. Metaphysics is also another predominant field that's becoming very popular now amongst people, and there's a lot of prominent scientists who are getting behind this. So metaphysics would then be the link between the physical and what is not physical. So, there is proof of metaphysics as well. But anyway, as far as the energy,
I've proof of metaphysics. There's no proof of like a spirit, like you're discussing, though, right? Like it's pretty clear that most physicists are not believing in like human beings have some spirit or anything.
Mainstream.
Like the closest you could possibly get would maybe be like the difference between like a mind body or like a mind material connection. But that's very different than a spirit.
Yes. Well, there are mainstream, what you're describing, yes, a lot of mainstream physicists don't prescribe to what, or don't subscribe to what I'm saying. But there are a lot of other, at least a couple, who are not mainstream and that are banned by the mainstream media to even talk about these ideas.
Well, and like,
there's no issue talking about them.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying that there's
people agree. Like when 99% of scientists agree, like there's no like spirit, right? There's of course going to be a couple that are still religious.
Well, I wouldn't say 99%.
For that position that you're pushing for, right?
Well, I wouldn't say 99%.
I wouldn't say 99% either. And then you also have to be very skeptical of what's coming out of that majority, because as I've mentioned earlier in the stream, there is a reproducibility crisis in science right now where you can't reproduce 66% of all scientific studies that have been done in modern day. So that has to naturally make one a skeptic of modern popular science if almost 70% of their studies can't even be reproduced, but yet many people are taking everything they say at face value. So they lose a bunch of credibility. I'm sorry?
Oh, is that in the aggregate for what can't be reproduced, or is that like dependent on specific fields?
No, it's science. It's scientific field in general. Yes, it's the scientific fields in general, and 66% of them can't reproduce whatever studies that they have conducted, therefore invalidating them.
Well, in this question,
I'm not sure on that, but I do know that it is the hard science.
Well, this question that you brought up is.
But soft science, the only thing that really comes out of soft science that is somewhat reliable. There's other things, but the main thing is IQ. But a lot of other social science stuff is, kind of up in the air. But hard sciences.
Oh yeah, that's exactly why I asked that question actually, because if what you're describing would be including the soft sciences, then it would make sense to me that it'd be difficult to reproduce studies in like, let's say politics, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to make studies on, you could talk about like authoritarian regimes because you can't really reproduce a study like that since you wouldn't be able to, control variables and reproduce like an authoritarian regime. Mm-hmm. Whereas I feel like science, like hard sciences specifically, has the credibility that it has because it is more reproducible and it kind of prides itself in that aspect. And so that's why I was asking if what you're talking about includes the soft sciences, because I think that would very much, throw a wrench in, like, basically the argument you're making here.
From what I remember, from what I remember, it is specifically hard sciences. I don't think many people are going to consider soft sciences when they say, it's like if somebody says they're a scientist, nobody's ever going to be like, oh, what do you do, political science? Nobody's ever going to ask that.
Yeah, so you'll have to look it up. Isn't it called the reproducibility crisis?
Yeah.
And actually, the whole energy transfer thing that you brought up, like the whole subject we're on right now, is obviously very important. Every single human being in the world has thought about this. I mean, it's literally what happens after life. So, like, the fact that every single human being has thought about this should make people think that maybe there's more to just like believing things right when you see them. Like, you should think about it more, because literally everybody thinks that this is something that should be thought about.
Additionally, I would say that every civilization, as I've been stating on here for a while now, has had a form of religion that has given it its ability to grow.
And to explain somewhat what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So
even like that is kind of is an issue in itself, though, because not every religion had like the science that we have today to try and explain the universe. So
but that doesn't matter though. That doesn't matter, because they've formed civilizations that could thrive over a period of time. So therefore, you could say that having a religion provides enough cohesion in the society to create civilization. So religions, therefore, become a good predictive model for functional societies. Therefore, you can't just throw out religions.
Yeah, well, religion proves that you don't need science.
Like certain, religious values. But I think you can also isolate those values that are positive and create a moral system that doesn't involve religion for a society.
I mean, we're trying to do that here in America. How's that working out?
Exactly, and it's failing. It's failing.
Well, we're not trying to. I mean, some people are, some people aren't. We're very fragmented.
In the West, we're very atheistic and agnostic. That's not true. Actually, that's not. Especially in America, there's a growing amount of people who are becoming anti-religious.
Sure, but there's still the minority. Like we're seeing religious rates that are in the 70 to 80%, and that is above a super majority, right? So,
yeah, but it's not all the same religion either.
A drastic change to where 60% of people are, are agnostic or atheists or anything like that. So that's just not true.
Yeah. Well, the majority of people may be religious, but they're also not like the same religion. So there's this like, there's not the cohesion that you would have like over in the Middle East, where the majority of the people are. But the reason why the majority of people are all the same religion is probably because they're killing each other if they're not.
Well, that's not true.
Well, in the Middle East, they persecute Christians sometimes and stuff like that.
Those are radical groups that get isolated in the media, but most Muslims are very, very peaceful.
So why is the rate of why are most people in the Middle East Muslim?
Well, because that's why are most people in the West Christian. It's because that's where the Christian theology was carried and followed, and the kingdoms and the history and the ancestry was there. Same with.
It's interesting how it moved over though, like because Christianity started in the Middle East. And now
allegedly, that's what they allege. But there's an interesting theory that this guy has been exploring. His name is Howdy Mikowski, I believe. And he puts out there that Jesus actually lived in France and that Christianity originated in the European nations, not the Middle East. I don't know how true it is, but there's an interesting hypothesis, I'll say. I don't know if it's a theory that should be explored,
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with exploring things. I mean, that's the thing. That's what makes us different than regular mainstream media. Mainstream media just tells you what to believe. We're sitting here having a conversation with you, trying to figure this shit out.
Sure. So maybe we should just get back to like your point of like energy transfer and that kind of thing, right? Because my view would mostly be one of like once we're dead, once brain activity stops and everything, there's not like a soul or anything that exists afterwards. It's just the energy that was within our bodies may decompose and so on, kind of like your friend was saying, right? So like how do we get from that position to the transcendence of the soul to
well, how does
your religious view?
Well, do we agree that energy can't be created or destroyed?
I think that like in a Newtonian sense, sure. I would honestly have to look more into like modern day physics and how things have changed to see if that's entirely true. But
for the sake of this conversation, yes, for the sake of this conversation, because we're both not physicists, we're both not experts in these things either. I don't know. You may be a physicist. I don't know.
So what the hell is?
But anyway,
like what's the difference between physics and metaphysics?
Metaphysics is more so the abstract, the things that are not physical.
So like they're just
meta means like beyond.
So
meta
things that
beyond.
Physics can't prove are just like
no.
Physics for thousands of years, right?
Yeah. So getting back to what you're saying, you then contradict yourself if you say that the energy can be decomposed.
No, I shouldn't say decompose. I apologize. When I was saying decompose, I mean like your body will decay and it'll give fruit for like nutrients in the soil that may grow into a tree or etc. Right?
And then an animal may eat some of
that. It's just being transferred from your body to a different place.
We agree with that, 100%.
Yeah, and so that's where now I'm asking like, how do we get from this to the transcendence of a soul?
Yeah, he's saying, how can you prove that there is something else going on?
Logically justified or argue for you.
Yeah, so I think that energy describes what would be a soul because there definitely are things which I'm gonna have to think. I haven't had these kind of discussions in a long time.
There are things that are physical that you know in yourself are there, like your thoughts, kind of like they're not physically proven, but you know they're there because you know what your thoughts are.
I mean, like personalities, personalities, emotions, things of that kind are indicative of something beyond simply the physical. Like obviously personalities do come some from your genes, some from your nature, from your environment. But then there's also memories. Where do your memories go? I mean, it's very interesting. So I would have to. I think
science would argue that all that we're describing right now is just the electricity transfer between your neurons, right? I mean, that's what science says.
Yeah. And basically, I would have to do a bunch of inference to conclude that there's a soul. Like it's very hard to
And what happens to that electricity? Like when you die, maybe that specific type of energy, the electricity, kind of like dissipates into the atmosphere, and then like that is your soul transferring into. I don't know, man. I'm just coming up with this shit off the top of my head, but.
So here's something interesting. There's been a study performed, and we can get. I don't want to necessarily get back into the can of worms of like the reproducibility crisis, because like from what I'm looking into, it seems like a lot of scientists are troubled by this. I don't necessarily see what field it is, but out of like 1,500, it seems like over 50% are having issue reproducing studies. But nevertheless, like it seems like there was a study that was performed where. They're trying to figure out like which neurons fired when people did a certain action and like when they thought of doing that action. And so I believe the study had people like hold almost like a clicker type device with something hooked up to their head that kind of checked brain activity, and they're asked to click the button when they thought of clicking the button. And what they realized is that in areas of their brain where like that would fire when they would be wanting to click the button or when they would think about that, they fired about like 6 seconds before they actually hit the button, which the scientists took as indicative of the fact that like your brain is essentially doing these things before you you think of those types of things, right?
Yeah, Sam Harris did this.
An argument against free will. It's been argued as stronger evidence for like a very determinist materialist view of the world, right?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be materialist.
Just the brain activity of neurons firing and chemicals and so on going on, right?
So you're saying that. So you're saying that like the brain is doing things before you actually think about it, and so this is kind of like takes away the whole idea of free will, like almost like we're programmed a certain way.
And I think scientists would typically say that in general is that we are determined beings. We are. There's not necessarily.
It's an argument for God
because the laws of physics, the laws of everything wouldn't necessarily allow it. Right?
Yeah. So with that. It doesn't. So let's say it is a deterministic world that we live in. It doesn't mean that it's materialistic, and it doesn't negate the fact that there could be a God, because there are theologies that everything is predetermined and that you have been made to do a certain thing, and God or the Creator or whatever you want to call it has designed you to do that thing, and you will act how you act because of things are predetermined. So it doesn't necessarily negate the spiritual by saying it's deterministic. And it also, I read Sam Harris's book on free will, and he mentioned that particular study in which you're referring to. I think that it's kind of flawed, though, because once you get to more complex things, how do you determine the free will at that point? Like they only did it for basic things, very basic things. So then you have to extrapolate that out. Would that work in an event like what you would do in a car accident? Would that work in an event in like a moment of crises, like let's say a shooting event or something? Like, how would you reproduce those things? So yes, maybe because you have a propensity to always go to vanilla ice cream, you're always going to do vanilla ice cream because your brain has been, addicted to it since you've been 5 years old. So then you're going to have that trigger to go towards that sugary food. But then what about events that you have never been involved in? What about things that are just too complicated in order to pinpoint where your will is coming from? Additionally, if you, like, for example, if you have a monkey, I'm pretty sure you've seen these videos, has like a handful of something and it's stuck in a device where it can only be free if it lets go of what it has. Then it can be free, but then it doesn't do that. It just is caught in that mindset where it's like, I need this. It doesn't. It's almost as if that doesn't have a choice. However, if you put a human in that situation, a human can decide to react like the monkey, or it can let it go, and then that could be indicative of free will, that you have the choice to be locked in there or not locked in there. So that's an interesting study. I've thought a lot about that one particularly, and so I don't think that it's accounting for more complicated and overall situations. It's very simple, the situations, and I can see how some things would appear not to be free will. However, that person could change their mind in the middle of the study as well. Like, okay, their brain said this thing, and they want to go for that thing, but they can control that impulse to do so and go for the other things too.
So I would say that, like, one, it's just evidence supporting that type of view.
100%.
Point of view would be still like valid without that study having even been conducted, right? Because it's not like this point of view is just like based on one study. It's one that's kind of like been assumed, and we can say it's not necessarily been proven, right? It's one thing that, like, understanding the brain itself is such a difficult task, but you know, it's one that's been typically supported, I feel, by most scientists. And so it's, you know, and as far as like Sam Harris goes, I'm not necessarily sure what book you read.
Free Will, on free will.
I find it interesting just for his argument that you can create like a scientific system of morality that can be prescriptive instead of just a descriptive, which I personally disagree with that. I think that, you know, morality is not objective in the sense that he wants to make it, but you know, it's interesting stuff to think about for sure.
It is.
And let's see, there was something. Oh, I was going to say, and I totally can understand that if, you know, there's a possibility that, you know, that determinism and God can be this. You know, I would in fact think that, like, it would be most logical if there was a God for the world to be determined, right? Because, like, if there's a God who has like a divine plan and that kind of thing, it would make sense that that'd be the case. However, you know, even like you know, and I should say, like, I consider myself like an agnostic atheist, right? Where it's like in my day-to-day life, I pretty much act as if you know, I don't believe there's a God. I'm gonna take that position, but like, if you really were to push me, if I'm going from like a scientific position, I would say I'm agnostic, right? Like, even Richard Dawkins, for example, I'm sure you've heard of him, right? One of the four horsemen of atheism. He, you know, he came up with a 0 to 7 scale where I think 7, it's like 0 is you believe in God and 7's you're an atheist. He'd say for himself he's like a 6.9, right? He's not quite a full 7. He's still technically agnostic because since he doesn't understand everything, there's always the possibility that there is a God, right? He accepts that fact. So I mean, I'd say, like, for the sake of conversation, I'm, you know, in that group as well, but I never act as if there is a God, and I feel like I can act pretty morally by creating my own system rather than like having to rely on an old school system that was created by, you know, quote unquote created by a God, right? But in my view, created by people to create a civilization that was somewhat stable.
So do you believe in like macro, micro? Like, just, you know, there's bigger things in there, like macroeconomics and microeconomics.
Yeah,
macroeconomics could affect microeconomics.
You cut out a little bit there.
Yeah, yeah. So microeconomics, and microeconomics could affect microeconomics.
Sure.
And they actually do affect it. We know that. So where I'm getting at with this is, we know that there's a natural order in the world, correct? We know, like, you don't even need to be religious or spiritual at all. There is and it doesn't matter what world you prescribe, what worldview you prescribe to, whether it be, because we were talking about this earlier, and by the way, I don't know. That's all I'm going to say on that one. But we don't know, like, for instance, you know, whether your worldview is a globe, whether your worldview is a flat earth, whether your worldview is this holographic universe that we live in. It doesn't matter, because either way, there's natural order in the world. There are things that work just right. So we can then, from there, say that there has to be a right way to live. If there's a right way that things are ordered, and there's things, how certain things work, there's certain laws in nature, why there would not be laws on humanity? Because humanity is a part of nature, and humanity is nature, arguably. So it is a force of nature.
There are laws on humanity, right? Or a lot of people, right? Like, we have laws of gravity and
Yes, so I do agree with you that that is an issue, but it doesn't mean that there isn't one. That's my whole point. There could be an issue, it could be debated, but I would say that there is an objective moral code that humans should live by. And that,
And what's that code based on?
for me, it would be based on my view of what God is. And by the way, I have a hierarchical view of religion. So I don't think that, for instance, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism are all invalid, and that you can't go to heaven, or you quote unquote can't go to heaven, or you quote unquote can't be saved if you're a Buddhist. I take it as there's a hierarchical view of religions. Therefore, there's better religions and worse religions to follow and get you closer to that natural order of things. And so, with that, I think that Christianity, in its true sense, not in what you may understand it as, because a lot of people are very confused on what Christianity really means. For instance, one big thing that I like to throw out there that people who claim to be Christian don't understand is that, for instance, polygamy is perfectly fine in a Christian worldview. A lot of Christians don't accept that, but it is perfectly fine in a Christian view. So I'm just giving you my example here that when I'm saying Christianity, you can't assume, not that I'm saying that you're assuming, but you can't assume that I'm talking about mainstream Christianity, what everybody knows is Christianity. But that is where I believe morality is deriving from, is a God, is a creator, who, by the way, would have created all religions or influenced all religions. So all religions have truth in their morality code, but I think that Christianity, in its view, is the truest and closest form to the law for humanity that has been created.
So do you think that like objective morals only exists if a God exists?
Well, there would have to be, because we can't make our own. There would not. It would be relative if there were just humans. Because, as Nietzsche said, Nietzsche talks about the genealogy of morality. He has a very good argument for morals. Basically, in a humanist worldview, you have basically the good, like the rich people. That's how he argues it. That the rich people, the wealthy people, the elites of society were able to create morals. And so, from that philosophical view, I think that it would be incoherent to have an objective worldview without objective morality without a creator, because then it's going to be relative to cultures and society and humans.
And I mean, isn't that his argument though? Doesn't he essentially argue initially that, like, if you look at Greek and Roman culture, it was the people with power created what was good and what was bad.
100%.
Christians that came along and they reversed everything to good and evil.
No,
the meek and the weak as good, and the powerful and strong as evil.
No, I think
the entire moral system.
No, I have a different opinion on that particular thing on Nietzsche.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was saying with Nietzsche's perspective on it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
What Nietzsche's argument was.
Well, no, and Nietzsche was referring to slave morality, specifically in what you're talking about.
That's what the Christian morality is.
But if you read Antichrist, if you read his Antichrist, he actually praises Jesus Christ, and he thinks that his way of life is really good. What he criticizes is Paul and the traditional Christian view. But in turn, he gave respect and thought that Jesus was a wonderful man, and that Jesus' life was the way. And that was in the Antichrist, his book, The Antichrist.
I don't remember him saying any of that in the Antichrist. But maybe
well, he didn't say what I'm saying verbatim, but he did praise Jesus. Yeah. He did say that in his worldview, Jesus was the only Christian that ever lived.
Yes.
However,
he did say that.
However, he had nothing bad to say about Jesus, and he had only good things to say about Jesus, and that Jesus essentially had lived a good life, and that he had died for what he believed in.
Yeah, I would agree with. I believe that's what he argues in the Antichrist. But ultimately, I'm not necessarily sure if you're just trying to. I don't disagree on anything with Jesus necessarily. I disagree with Christianity in general, and that's what Nietzsche's. The primary drive of his argument is he's trying to, quote unquote, reevaluate all values, right?
Yep.
And so, from my perspective, I'd argue on the same lines of him that the basis of Christianity is nihilism. And I think that is an issue the same way that you'd probably think that nihilism in a secular society is an issue, right?
Well, I agree with Nietzsche on a lot of his criticisms of Christianity is as it's understood. Hence why I gave my preface of what I think, like my stance on Christianity and how I think that the mainstream view, the popular view of Christianity is totally nihilistic. It's disgusting to me because there's so many Christians that I know that are excited for what they believe is the second coming. They're excited for people to be burning in hell. They're excited for people to get separated from God. I think that that's a very nihilistic view, and they're excited. They're worshiping death continuously. So I would agree with Nietzsche's view on Christianity. I think that the modern worldview, and especially in the time that he lived in, Christianity has been corrupted. But I would then say that the Bible and other Christian theologians would say that this has been predicted, that Christianity would be corrupted into this nihilistic beast that we have today, which would draw a lot of people away, which would pull a lot of people away from it.
So I agree with what you're saying so far, but I would like to say that you're not taking Nietzsche's argument to its fullest extent, which is that it's not just like the hoping of people burning in hell that makes Christianity nihilistic. It's the fact that Christianity is anti-life, and the fact that you are essentially living this life for the next one. And so when you suppose that there is a heaven and hell, when you suppose that is an infinite state, essentially an eternal state, so to speak, you are creating a system where the life that we currently living means nothing, because all it is for getting us into heaven or hell, essentially. Like that is I think the ultimate view. That is the true view of what Nietzsche was arguing, and that's what I ultimately agree with. Is that when you are arguing that we live here for a very finite amount of time, and the actions and decisions you make here dictate whether you get into heaven and hell are forever. It changes your life now for not living for your life now. You're living for what comes after this.
Well,
and that's what makes it fundamentally anti-life and nihilistic.
I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying as far as the modern, or not even modern, but just the mainstream Christianity view is 100% right what you're saying, which is why I mentioned in my response to what you originally said was that the modern view of Christianity is a death cult, which would then tie into what you're saying is anti-life, is nihilistic. There is no meaning to this life because everything matters to the next life. But then that's actually a contradiction because nihilism means there's no meaning. And I'm not saying I agree with this, by the way. I'm just exploring this thought right now. And that is, if you're claiming Christianity is nihilistic, but everything we do in this life determines whether or not we go to heaven or hell for eternity, that then means that this life can't be nihilistic. There is a meaning to this life, and the meaning to this life from this Christian, I'm not saying this is what I agree with, but this meaning of life then would be to get to heaven or hell. So it then means that Christianity can't be nihilistic if there is meaning in this physical realm. I just thought about that right now. Once again, I'm not saying that even if, so for instance, like in my Christian theology, I don't necessarily believe that heaven and hell are eternal. And I don't necessarily believe that you remain in this heavenly state or this hell state forever. I know I just said the same thing twice, but what I mean is that I do think that there's the opportunity for reincarnation or some other explanation of the cycle of life to be involved in there. And also, heaven and hell can be experienced here on earth as well. You can have a very blissful life or you can have a very hellish life. So, so anyway, that would be my response to what you were saying.
Yeah, so I guess you can line like there's two parts of what Nietzsche would say. One is nihilism and one is anti-life, right? I think that what you said, nothing you necessarily said would contradict that position of anti-life. So where I can see your issue with him saying nihilism is, I think his argument would typically be from a materialist perspective. That, like, if you're believing in things that clearly don't exist, it doesn't matter if like you're putting all the weight on this thing; it's still nihilism at the end. But like, I'm not necessarily here to like argue and defend Nietzsche and everything. I disagree with a lot of his things, like his views on democracy, for example, things like that. But yeah, I guess like we still have yet to get to the soul and or I guess the existence of a God, right? Like that's kind of been the thing that we still haven't made that connection.
Well, I think that the existence of
still there, by the way.
He is. So on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch, you can see him in the camera. It's just hard when we're going live off of my phone for TikTok to show both with the green screen.
I know you're on YouTube and everything as as well.
Yeah, this is going to be a podcast, and this is something we do every Sunday, and then we have a show Monday through Friday called The Honest Hour, and then we have a sports channel on Saturday. So we produce a lot of different kind of content. But yeah, so thank you. As far as there being a creator, as there being a God, logically there has to be a first mover, or else you have no order. I mean, it's literally that simple. Like there could be no.
The Big Bang could be the first mover, despite the fact that scientists think there may have been Big Bangs prior.
Well, then, I mean, no, because that would just be a chaotic existence. And if it's just a chaotic existence, then we literally can't even, like, fundamentally, you would not be able to have coherent sentences if the world itself is just chaotic and out of order, and then naturally nihilistic. Then there would be no meaning in anything ever. Everything would be relative completely.
Sorry, when you say like chaotic and out of order, what would necessarily be out of order with something like the Big Bang? Like, just because there's like different atoms and everything floating around in what seems like a chaotic way doesn't necessarily mean that it's not still governed by like natural laws.
But then where do those natural laws come from? Who created the natural laws? The natural laws can't just exist out of nothing. Everything that we see in existence has come from something. There has been a creator from it. Of it, rather.
I will argue with you on like the first mover argument and like the existence of a creator, but I do have to say like my position would essentially be that from what we know, there was a Big Bang that happened. I don't know if you necessarily dispute the claim of that, considering like we still see the effects of the Big Bang if we look at the universe astronomically, right?
It's a theory.
And I can't necessarily argue what was before that or how that came about, but I think that there's still stronger evidence for that than there is of like a first mover God, for example. And so,
well, it's a theory to begin with, and there is, and also, it's nothing that you can prove. And the explanation for creation on this earth has changed many times as well. Right now, we're just in the flavor of Big Bang. I think that it's much simpler and easier and logical to say, well, there had to be an intelligent designer that created everything because there's order, there's natural laws. Where do these come from? Whether or not you believe in a globe Earth theory where there's space-time and all of that, or you believe in a flat Earth theory, there has to be there is a natural order to both of them. And where do those natural orders come from? There has to be an order maker in order for there to be even order. It's very simple. I mean, those are things that we can see in real life, like an engine. An engineer had to put an engine together in order for it to function properly so it is not out of order, right? And then there has to be a mechanic to come in and fix the order as well, like a table. A table just doesn't come you can't make a table out of chaos.
Yeah, the universe is different than like the clockmaker argument that you're essentially making right now, right?
I don't think so at all, because the universe has natural laws that govern it. I gotta go. All right, man. See you later, man. Happy Father's Day.
Cover our other topics later. So you guys have a good one. Peace out.
See you, man. Apologies. The teleological argument. Yeah, I mean, like it's still, once again, it seems like as someone who believes in science, I can definitively say how these things came about, and also say that there wasn't that doesn't necessarily prove the fact that there was a mind, intelligent being or something that was behind those things.
But on a philosophical level,
take like a larger view of religion, and like you did earlier, and say that God could mean the universe itself, that kind of thing. That's not necessarily like a conscious being or like a immortal thing or whatever, or omnipotent being. Like I could agree to a claim like that just because it's so broad, right? But once we start getting into the nitty gritty, like it is the Christian God, which is some sort of cognizant being, that kind of thing, or cognizant entity of some kind, spirit or soul or whatever. That's when it starts getting, you're just basing everything on pure assumptions that aren't backed by like anything, other than like a book that's purely circular in logic.
But circular logic isn't bad necessarily either. Circular logic is actually
where I would consider it kind of circular, right? Well, like the basis for like a book, and everything from that. I think there's so many holes and issues we can bring up with.
I agree with you.
That it's different in a lot of ways than like maybe like circular art, circular logic with like science even, right?
I agree with you, and that's why I think that it's better on a theological level and even a philosophical level to debate the existence of a first mover and a creator as opposed to one particular God. Because as I've already mentioned before, I think that what I consider God has created all religions. However, there are some religions that are better than others, and that can lead you closer to understanding Him, or it, rather. I won't put a gender. It's just out of habit because the book I read, and that's how the Christians identify Him as a father, as a Him. But yeah, so I mean, and I think that there is, like, you can philosophically come to the conclusion that there has to be a first mover, like in a philosophical. And also, by the way, when you said that you believe in science, I find that kind of ironic because science is to know, and so you don't need belief in science. This has been a new thing that's coming out lately. This is this new mantra that the controllers, if you will, that the mainstream have been pushing out on people to believe in science, when science is to be the study of knowledge, like what do you know? And so therefore, this is why I say I don't believe in science. I know that the scientific method is real and observational science is real. There is no need to believe in science. To believe in science then puts science in the same category as religion.
I mean, I think science is slightly different than like epistemology for one, but I think that like the argument that they're mostly making for believe in science, they use it as a catchy slogan, but the main purpose was like we should believe in the authorities when it comes to COVID was like their main purpose with that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, that's neither here nor there, I suppose, for a conversation. And even I do want to say, even if we do suppose that there is a first mover, and that mover is, like we can, I guess, even if we suppose there's a first mover, we can't, that claim itself does not prove the existence of the Christian God or anything, right? So now we would need, and I will still contest on the first mover argument, but we would even need another link from that to the Christian God that you espouse, right?
Well, once again, as I've been saying, the God that I believe in has created all religions, and I think that the Christian religion, in my opinion, this is also where people who are more spiritual or religious will admit, where others who are more materialistic and scientific, if you will, won't. And that is, we have to take a leap of faith. There is a leap of faith in all of this. Whether or not you're scientific or not, there's a leap in faith in everything that we're doing. There's a bunch of assumptions, by the way, in mathematics. There's a bunch of assumptions in science. So there's a bunch of assumptions that build up what we think is true in math and science as well. This is well known in the academic society. Like any academic will tell you, well, yeah, there's a bunch of assumptions. But no academic and no mainstream scientist will ever say, well, I have to take the leap of faith. So this is where we even have common ground, whether or not you want to admit it or any materialist wants to admit it. There's a leap of faith in everything that we're doing here. But what I'm saying, though, is I would never try to I won't say that I won't never, but as far as arguing specifically for a Christian God, that's I think, in my opinion, far too difficult. Maybe there's smarter, more intelligent, more informed people who can do it. But personally,
you're doing a great job so far, by the way.
Well, thank you.
As far as like, I haven't, you're granted. Like, I think a lot of the arguments are, basically in line with other people that you would maybe say are the smarter people that could argue for your God. But other than that, like, I think you're doing it as well as any other, theologian could do. So, congrats.
Well, I appreciate that, and I mean, you're posing good questions. Your rebuttals and your responses are very well too, very articulate and well spoken, and it's been a breath of fresh air having you on as opposed to some of the other people that have come on, because I find that a lot of people have a hard time having these conversations, whether it be an intelligence issue, whether it be an emotional issue. It's very difficult to have a cordial conversation where we're both accepting each other's points of view and then responding in a respectful manner. And nobody here is getting heated. So I want to thank you very much for that, because it's hard to do these days, and I find that especially when we're talking about topics like this, people get far too emotional. But getting back to what I was saying, like the as far as making a connection to the Christian God, I would never try to do that, at least right now. I'm not prepared to make those kind of statements because, once again, I am taking a leap of faith in my belief system, and I think that that's a honorable thing to admit. And I think I think there's nothing intellectually wrong with that either. I know a lot of people want to criticize Christians or religious people for taking leaps of faith in their belief system, but we take leaps of faith every day in everything that we do. Not in everything that we do, but in most things that we believe or we think we know are just simply belief systems. And most people are too afraid to admit the leap of faith. But there is, like I've already stated, I think there's a first mover, and I think that God himself is the creator of all religions, not just one religion. So that would be the thing that I differ once again with what you're saying, like making the argument for the Christian God. I would just make the argument that there is a God, and that there is a religion, and that religions order societies, and civilizations function with religions very well. And when they don't have religions, then they fall apart. And so then that is indicative that religions are a good thing, and then religions come from a higher power. And so that higher power will then be God, whatever you want to call that higher power, whether it be the universe, whatever, as I mentioned before.
So would you say that when you say all religions, like, are you including like polytheistic religions in that category as well?
I mean, yeah, I would include like Hinduism, yeah.
Or like even the more ancient, like the Greeks and the Romans with like Zeus, Poseidon, we could say. Like,
and we could even go back further to tribal religions like animism, 100%. Yes.
And like what's it called? Like Zoroastrianism and so on.
Yes. I think that Christianity. Yep, I think that Christianity is greatly influenced by Zoroastrianism. I think that Christianity is also greatly influenced by Mithraism.
Okay. And so, I mean, like, I guess I still have qualms with like the first mover, unmoved mover argument. Mainly that I think that we've kind of talked about like the steps after you've assumed this to be true, right? And personally, my position is still once again like I think that I think that stepping from like the unmoved mover to that being like some sort of like Christian entity or like religious God entity or anything is still a stretch. If we even assume that the unmoved mover argument's true, to me, like you talked about like the leap of faith that we all take, right? And I agree, like to a certain extent, like we have to take a leap of faith with everything, right? I think that's in a way how like epistemic knowledge functions, right? Or how knowledge itself functions is I'm kind of from a position of like ultimate skepticism, right? But of course, like having that position, I can't really function in my life if I'm like skeptical of everything, right? So at some level, I have to tacitly accept that like maybe for functioning in society, I gotta work on a different framework there. But and I hold the same view of nihilism, right? Where I'm like the world's ultimately nihilistic, but it's I can't function in the world like that, so I have to create my own system. But nevertheless, to get back to the point, like I think that the difference is science is more testable than religion is. I think that's probably the biggest one, and we can talk about reproducibility issues. But a lot of the things that like are the bread and butter of science, like we could talk about Newtonian physics or like what's happened after with like theory of relativity and so on with Einstein. Like those things, I feel like there's a pretty strong consensus that like the more and more we look into the universe, the more and more we see these things to be close to whatever we could consider as truth. Whereas it seems to me like there are stronger arguments to support the role of religion and God as being a stabilizing force for pre-scientific civilizations rather than for the existence of the gods that those religions espouse.
Yeah, I would have to disagree. I think that religion and science work well together. Most of our greatest discoveries, I mean, Newton grew up in a very Christian era. Same with Einstein. So, I mean, a lot of the most predominant scientists that we know today were Christian or were at least spiritual in some way, shape, or form. They believed in a higher power. They believed in the Creator, some way, shape, or form. So it doesn't even have to be Christian. A lot of these extremely intelligent people who made amazing discoveries, the majority of them had not scientific, but religious beliefs. So I don't think that religion and science are exclusive from each other. I think that they strengthen each other, if nothing else.
Okay. I mean, I think that most scientists, now it may not be 99% to be fair, but I think most scientists would say that the scientific method and science itself is not being strengthened by religion, but I think they would argue that in a lot of cases it's been hindered and now it's replacing religion. I tend to hold that view to be true as well. But
yeah, but then you have to go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'll stop there. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, so with what modern scientists would say, like as far as religion and science, or I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I got a phone call in the middle of that, so I lost my train of thought. You said, repeat what you said again.
What did I say? Sorry,
You're good.
I think I said that. What were we talking about before that? I guess it was clearly something about science, but
yes, and you were saying basically how science thinks that religion actually hinders. Religion hinders science, I believe.
Yeah, I think people would probably point to I'm blanking on his name. I was gonna say the heliocentric theory with Galileo and how the church was trying its best to suppress things like that. I think a lot of scientists would use examples like that to show the hindrance of religion, and then they would say that the things that we've been able to accomplish with science far surpasses pretty much everything we've accomplished with religion.
But then
we've been able to learn more because of that.
Yeah. So, but without religion, you would never have science because without civilization, you would never have science. Sorry. So I said, but without religion, you would never have science, because without religion, you would never have the civilizations that we have today. So it seems to me, as I've argued, they work together. They do not negate one another. They actually complement each other. They're not antagonistic. They've become antagonistic because religion, as of late, has become more of science, as of late, has become more of a religion. And I'm still listening. I got to grab a phone charger.
I'll talk to the people for a minute. I guess my argument against that, Michelle's statement goes back, is essentially that religions played a historic role. Religion has played a role historically that I think we could probably say for a decent part has maybe been positive. I'd say if civilization had discovered, had started using the scientific method earlier, we'd be much further along than we currently are. And I guess your argument is essentially that religion has played a key role with creating a moral system for people, and that's been good for keeping civilization stable and stuff. But I think that if we're going to make that argument, we also have to consider the role that religion has played in creating unjustified power structures that have hindered civilization and growth by justifying unjust systems. There have been arguments for that Christians, or I guess religious people in general, dating back past Christians, have used for slavery or other forms of forced labor and even feudalism and things like that, and the Dark Ages and so on. And so if we're going to take the good of the stabilizing impacts, it's stabilizing it at the cost of a certain class and so on. And I think that those things have helped in another way hinder our development as a species.
So my first response to that would be on the scientific method. Religion, I think, is the creator of the scientific method because they were trying to prove things were real during that time, whether it be their belief systems or other things, understanding how the world worked. And religion was the impetus for them to become inquisitive. and then explore with the scientific method. So that's one thing.
Was doing that regardless of the existence of a god in a lot of ways, right? If we go back to like the Socratic and pre-Socratic philosophers, I don't think they were doing what they're doing and trying to understand truth and so on necessarily because of a god. Rather, they were just had an interest in this idea of truth itself.
That is partially. So what we're both saying, I would say, is correct. There was probably a group of people who were inspired to do the scientific method because of their belief, and then there was others which they would call the truth, in the pursuit of truth, which we can agree on that as well. So they were looking at it. So I guess a better way to phrase it then is the scientific method originated because of the search of truth, whether that be seeking a higher power or just looking how the natural order works or the natural world works. So that would be the first thing that I say, that the scientific method, once again, in religion, can go hand in hand. There's been a lot of wonderful discoveries using the scientific method under a religious framework. And then there were a couple other points that you made that are fleeing me right now. If you want to refresh my memory.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't mean to kind of move the conversation on, but if you want to think about what it was, what I was going to say is I can maybe understand from the perspective you're trying to say religion goes hand in hand with science, or it did. I would definitely contest.
I remember.
Currently does. Okay, do you want to go on that?
Yeah. So you said that there's also been repercussions to the civilizations created by religion, and you listed off a few things: feudalism, authoritarian regimes, slavery, etc. I actually have a totally different view on those things, by the way. But getting to that, you also would have to acknowledge the fact that the scientific civilization that we're creating now has negative impacts on humanity. I mean, for instance, one of the things is forced medical procedures that are attempting to be taking place right now in the name of science. That to me is very immoral and wrong. I can't really say. I can't list specifically, but it involves what I would.
Like a pro-life type argument, or are we talking about a trans argument or something different entirely?
More so actual medicines. What some people would consider medicines, others would call them poison. They have a pointy needle and you get jabbed. So force. Yeah. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So there are this big push, whether or not you want to defend it or not, but these are also negative things. And then also, and I'm not trying to go off on that whole thing anyway. It's too sensitive. It's too much censorship. But additionally, you have the wokeism that has taken place. And the reason wokeism has taken place is because of the absence of a coherent religion, because people need something to believe in. And so then they start getting these very humanistic views, and then they make those views God. And then we also see the deification of the medical field. So we basically are transferring our worship power, our natural desire to worship, into the material, into institutions, which then have far worse implications for the world. I mean, this is what Brave New World is all about. Brave New World is the revolution to end revolutions. And this is, they understood, these authors understood, Huxley, I believe, is one who wrote Brave New World, and his father or grandfather coined the term transhumanism. And so the ultimate goal for the world in which we see the global elite heading are, and by the way, I don't believe in one fraction of global elitism. I don't believe in a lot of these conspiracy theories. I think a lot of them happen to be coincidences and are a bunch of different forces that just happen to sometime work together. Anyway, but Brave New World is the perfect example of what a scientific world would look like, because then you would eliminate, there's logical arguments for this. You would eliminate the pain of birthing a child. You would also eliminate the stress and the downtime of a woman being pregnant. You would also eliminate the need of families. You would just then be a communal system. So that makes society much more fluid and adaptable. and nobody is tied down to children. I totally disagree with these points, by the way, but this is the logical arguments that they make in the book, right? Like, I mean, they don't explicitly make these arguments, but these are what you can glean from what the society is shaped like. And so, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so like real quick, the difference I think between religion and science that I think matters, and we can talk about certain issues that you're bringing up here. Science is purely descriptive; it's not prescribing solutions to things, whereas that seems to be the big thing with religion. It's descriptive and prescriptive. So it's prescribing things like we can say, oh, you should be gay, right, as something that is considered a sin. So by creating these value categories, it creates prescriptions for how you ought to live your life, whereas science doesn't necessarily offer that. We can argue, we can say like there are scientists who will make prescriptive claims, but I think that is different than science itself in a lot of ways. And with regards to like your maybe like populist view or like your view of like anti-elitism, that kind of thing with like a global group and so on. So
I'm not anti-elite, by the way. I'm not anti-elite at all. I actually have more of what I would say a monarchical view of the world. I think that's the best.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm not anti-elite whatsoever.
I am willing to get into that, but what I was going to say is there's a book called Giants to Global Power Elite. It came out around 2018, and it's a continuation of what's been about a 60-year long like sociological study. So it started with the first author in the 1960s, and it's there have been various sociologists throughout the last 60 years that have kind of furthered it. But the argument is essentially that there's if you look at like some of they call them in the book asset management companies, I believe, which would be like if you've heard of like Vanguard or
BlackRock,
like basically like the large banks, right? The book basically details like based on pulling off of like their investments, like how interconnected they all are, and it kind of goes in depth on the people who run these, who manage these firms, right? And it goes into like if you look at them with like the 20 biggest in the entire world, which are all highly interconnected, all managing trillions in wealth combined. I think about 50 trillion. They all pretty much everyone who managed them went to like one of 20 different schools. And like it really goes in depth on like how interconnected the whole system is. I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, this is some sort of cabal type thing, but it makes sense logically just from like how our capitalist system structured. But I thought maybe if you're interested in like getting maybe more of like a sound argument kind of in that field, like that would be a very good book to look into because it brings up a lot. It was done by a pretty big team of sociologists and researchers, and it's interesting view of the world. But nevertheless, like so you say monarchy, right? Like one would call monarchy like a dictatorship in like modern terms, right?
I have nothing against dictatorships either.
Okay, and I'm fair like using. I don't want to load it with like
no, I get it.
Super negative connotations,
but I'll accept it. Yeah.
Right. Let's hear it.
Hear what exactly?
What's your argument for such a system, right? Like, when you say what kind of like authoritarianism, right? Like, are we talking like the type of authoritarianism you could argue is like China, or are we talking like an older theory of it with like like the Sun King Louis, or like a Napoleon, or where are you going with monarchy exactly?
Yeah. So I think that China has a good political system that works for them. We have to respect the fact that they've had a cohesive, coherent society for 5,000 years. That says a lot about them. I know that they've went through dynasties, republics, revolutions, etc. But they've been around for 5,000 years coherently. So that speaks volumes. So I don't really have anything against the Chinese way of governing. But my view would be probably more old school in terms of monarchy, where it should be probably bloodline. I think that there should be one ruler for a lifetime. I think that it would be easier. And also, these dictatorships, monarchies, whatever you want to call them, have historically lasted much longer than any democracy or republic ever has. And as a result, like the only time republics or democracies come about are through revolutions, are through violent acts, whereas monarchies, they don't come about as that. It's just the way naturally people want things, because people are naturally hierarchical. So they do want an alpha, they do want somebody to lead. Whether or not, like, well, it's provable. I mean, this is something that you can't disagree with. Humans are societal beings, and so we live in civilizations.
I think that
there has to be a hierarchy.
The entire system of feudalism and these older systems of monarchy are also predicated on forms of violence and oppression, right? And so, we can talk about like maybe the Enlightenment or the Age of Reason, and talk about how like people are more educated now, and it was much easier to control people when they were uneducated, and the best thing they could do was like have a subsistence living on a farm, that kind of thing, right? But I think like to say that like that's the natural state of the world is I think it's incorrect. I think it had a it existed in a historical period with this specific system of economics, and I think that we've moved to much more advanced economic systems and are able to produce much more. It just cannot thrive in such a system anymore.
I disagree that we have a more advanced economic system. We have a debt-based system where you need usury. So usury, for those of you who are unaware, is basically making money off of debt, which I think is very immoral. And you then also have to have free trade, which free trade, in my opinion, is immoral. And then you also have to have a free market, and a free market, in my opinion, is immoral. So, which one?
Let's talk about free trade and free market, right?
So, free market, first off, I am totally against the idea of a free market, because there needs to be regulations on a market. I don't think that it would be appropriate in a true free market. By definition, you would allow for an 8-year-old to be on the corner selling themselves. That to me is disgusting and wrong. So I mean that right there just totally negates the argument of a free market. And then there's other regulations, of course. Like, I'm a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt. He's the one that busted up the monopolies and started the antitrust laws. So. And then as far as free trade requires the movement of free labor. So that's why in free trade, you then get, like we went over to Japan for manufacturing, we went over to China for manufacturing. We went over there for manufacturing because of.
That's not free, the movement of labor.
No, it is. This what I'm describing is free trade in the free market. This is the economic system as a whole. And so it isn't just capitalism, by the way. This is
a bit of a non sequitur, though, right? Like saying, so what you essentially said is, just to clarify, you said the issue with free trade is it's the free movement of labor, and then you gave examples of the movement of capital rather than the movement of labor.
But humans, I don't think humans are capital.
Manufacturing overseas, that's capital moving from here to factories there, right? What free labor would be is if Japanese immigrants came from Japan to the United States. That'd be the free movement of labor. What you described as the free movement of capital.
Well, I would say that, the capital has, so I mean, the capital is going where the labor is going. Where the labor's at.
Where the labor is, and where governments are willing to open up zones where there's no taxation, there's no environmental regulations, and things like that.
100%. And so over time, yes.
It's a term thing. You're describing a different thing than what you claimed, but it's all good.
So, but we're on the same page on what I'm referring to. So
I just wanted to maybe clarify for those who are listening.
Fair enough. So that right there is a huge issue, because over time, it doesn't actually work. It's not sustainable, because that society in which you have transferred your capital or your labor is eventually going to get to the point where they're getting wealthy. And so then prices are going up, and then things are going to cost more money over there as well, with inflation over time as well, since we live in this debt-based system and we have to keep printing money based off of debt. And so I think that the whole system is wrong, and I think that we're in for a rude awakening economically, as far as that goes. And I think it's immoral. I think it causes more pain than good.
Sure. So, I mean, I think I disagree in a lot of ways here, but like some of the big things that I think are important to point out with our economic system that makes it fundamentally different than pretty much every other economic system that's existed has been like specialization of labor, right? And so, like, we could think of, like, if we go back to like Fordism with like the assembly line, or the factory line, that kind of thing. Stuff like that made labor so much more efficient than it used to be, where it'd be like a cobbler making shoes and the single blacksmith making all the iron and so on, right? We have systems of efficiency that have not existed before, that have allowed for civilizations to significantly surpass like subsistence standards of living. And with those changes I believe comes, rises in education and things like that, right? And so if your argument is we need to return to like a feudal type system where there isn't this specialization of labor and so on, I think that you also have to accept the fact that education is not going to be nearly what it is today. People are going to be, returning to illiteracy, and we're going to be returning to subsistence standards of living. And I think I'll argue that is necessary for the system that you seem to be espousing.
Yeah, so we disagree that there's better forms of education. We disagree that there was subsistence forms of living. We disagree on a lot of that. I personally think that, well, first off, when it comes to education, I think education has only gotten worse. I don't think it's gotten better. I think it more so now it's indoctrination camps. The modern educational system was designed to create workers, fact.
Compared to what though, right?
Well, back in the day, I think it was much more natural the way teaching was. I think that parents have a responsibility and an obligation to teach their children. And I think that it's much more natural for the children to fall in line with what the parents do. If you look at today, there's a huge mental health issue in our world. And I think one of the reasons this is one component, not the whole thing, but one component of the mental health problem comes with the fact that you have an illusion of a multitude of choices as to what you can do. And so then that gets people in paralysis analysis. And so I think that causes a lot of issues, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And then it also causes confusion as well, because you're like, well, I can be at this job, but I can also do this job. Whereas if you come from a more, in my view, a natural setting of the world, which you go, what I refer to as natural, is you look at all the natural tribes in the world and how they're living and how long they've existed and how they have their roles. It's all based on their lineage. And I think that that's more of a natural way things should work. So I don't think that's good. And also, I think specialization has hindered us. It hasn't helped us at all. I think that not mastery. I think being a jack of all trades is much better than being a master of one thing. I think that humans were more insightful back in the day. I think that humans were more intelligent back in the day. I think that.
How far back are you going when you say back in the day?
I'm talking all the way back to antiquity, like archaic days.
Okay.
I think
I
that.
think the slave populations in those societies would disagree, but we can get it.
Slavery is also an interesting thing as well, because a lot of people wanted to be slaves because slavery was the best way that they could live their life. A lot of people prayed to be slaves one day. There's nothing immoral about slavery.
I don't agree with that at all.
Well, it's provable. It's provable. I mean, this is something like, for instance, if you study Christian history at all, or if you study any kind of religious history, you'll see that, like, for instance, not only were there jubilees, which I do believe in jubilees, so I do believe, like, after a certain amount of time, everybody's debts should be wiped off. And I also do think that as far as slavery goes, in that time, you were allowed to free your slaves. And also, there's a big misconception on how slaves were treated, especially from a Christian view. So when we look at slavery,
There's also slave revolts that happen as well, right?
this is true. But also, but if you look into those slave revolts, a lot of the slave revolts were incited by wealthy individuals. You're fine. So a lot of slave revolts, a lot of revolts in general, were started by quote unquote elites who wanted to change a regime and to come into power, because slave revolts do nothing. Revolutions, I'm against revolutions, by the way, too. I'm anti-revolution. I'm anti all of that. But slavery in and of itself, if you look at how slaves used to be treated, I don't know much about American slavery, and I think a lot of what we're taught about American slavery is incorrect from what I do know. But anyway, I would say that for a fact, actually, slaves back in the day were under law required to have the same living standard as their master. Eat the same food. It is true. It's 100% true. 100% true.
Maybe I have to see what the law said, but I know that in actuality that was clearly not the case. Have you read Angela Davis's Women, Race, and Class?
I have not, but what I'm telling you is actually historically true. Like I didn't graduate with my history degree, but that is what I did study in college is history, and so I do know how to look at I did 100%. So I did learn how to do. One of the best things that it taught me was how to find, do proper research, and find firsthand sources, primary sources. So what I am saying is historically factual. 100%. And this isn't for all societies. This isn't this.
Women who would kill their already born children because they didn't want them to live a life as slaves is evidence for that. But I can go into other examples as well.
Well, first off, we can't just generalize all of humanity in what I'm saying. Obviously, different societies did different things. What I'm saying is that there definitely were societies in history, in our world, that treated their slaves just as good as they treated themselves because they had to on a moral code and on the law level.
I can test that in, like, I'm not saying that, chattel slavery is the end all be all of slavery, right? Like, I think you can find examples of slavery being significantly different in Africa, for example, where it would be, not only would you be free, but you'd be included in the tribe, like you become incorporated into it over time, right? Like, that is true. However, it's the fact of coercion, of force, that I think is what makes these things significantly different than being a free person, right? Now, you may not believe, I'm not necessarily sure. It kind of sounds like you don't think of liberty as something that's every human should have.
I don't believe in freedom. I don't believe in freedom at all. I think freedom is a fallacy.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with you on that. I think that we could, there's a paradox of freedom and so on, right? And I think that if you live in society, you are not free to the extent that many people think that they are, things like that, right? But I think that there needs to be some sort of equality between people of force being used against them, whereas you seem to disagree, where you seem to be justifying force against others, just depending, right? And you're justifying it on some, claiming moral grounds of but the slaves enjoyed it, or the slaves had higher standards of living, and they lived just like the free people, even though, quote unquote free people, the slave owners, right? That kind of thing. Whereas, but I also want to say, when we talk about the big thing is when we talk about metrics of measuring societies, right? Like you said that people now are living worse lives than before, and it's based on what? Based on life expectancy or
that's one of them.
Or, what kind of thing?
Those are two things: education and life expectancy. So Western
happiness, material conditions, etc. Sanitation. There's so many different standards we could use to say that our lives are immeasurably better now than they were in feudalism or antiquity or any time that you want to bring up.
And I would disagree on almost all of those. The only thing where I would agree with is partially sanitation, but not all the way. I think that we wash our hands too often. I don't agree with a lot of antibacterial stuff. I think bacteria is a good thing. There's a lot of things that I don't agree with Western medicine on. But one of the most beautiful things that we have in Western medicine is surgery. But anyway, happiness I totally disagree with. Depression's at an all-time high. Western women are more depressed than ever. Everybody's on pills. I'm obviously using hyperbole. Not everybody's on pills, but you get what I mean. A lot of people are on pills. A lot of people have mental health conditions. And then there's an argument, well, it's because we're bringing it to the forefront. Wrong. I totally disagree with that. I mean, you had our World War II great-grandfathers who came to war, and they couldn't sit around and cry about what they saw. They had to get to work. They had to just do work. So I think work and having purpose cures all of the woes of mental health. I really think that mental health is, by and large, nonsense. I really do. I think the whole mental health thing, by and large, is nonsense. So happiness, I think, was much. If you look at tribal, so Weston Price, as I was getting at, he traveled the world and studied the natural tribes. He primarily did it for diet, but he found other things as well. And one of it was that they're always happy and they're always so chill and relaxed. They don't have any of the material things that we do, and they have a lot less stress. There's carefree living, and also like the substantial living that we have right now that you keep bringing up. This is all relative. I mean, people live in mud huts and are far happier than somebody who lives in a mansion. So, basically what you have to look at is, do you have what you need? And if you have what you need, we have a surplus of everything. I don't need this couch that's behind me. I don't need this painting. I just need food in my belly, and I need some sort of structure over my head to protect me from the environment. And if I have that, I have no reason not to be happy because I have everything I need.
There's definitely issues with our society that I'd be willing to go into, but I want to point out that there's a difference between tribal living versus state living, right?
There is. I agree.
Or our nation state, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking about these tribes, I don't think they had a monarchy system typically. I think that monarchies and the authoritarian systems that you subscribe to into existence more with states themselves, right?
Well, I would say that you can extrapolate a monarchy from tribal rules because there's hierarchies and there is a ruler. There is one ruler in tribes.
But it's much more equal in a lot of ways than than what you're claiming it is.
I've never made a claim of equality.
But I don't think people view the chieftain as someone who his laws are basically akin as laws of God, and you cannot cross these. It's more like we socially agree that this person is going to lead us, and if things change, then things will change.
But I've never made the argument. Well, really quick, I've never made the argument that the kings are getting their orders from God. I have never made that argument. I'm just simply stating.
It's an assumption on my part based on your religious beliefs, but regardless of that, right? It's the role of the leader in these tribes is significantly different than the role of a monarchy in any known civilization.
I think that you can extrapolate out. If you just scale it, then it would evolve into what you see as a monarchy in our state system.
I think that there is less class division. If not, I would argue there was no real class division within tribes. Whereas once you start getting, to like the civilizations that you're talking about, we start seeing class dynamics emerge. We start seeing, oppressive organs of the state being used to, create these class divisions and so on. Whereas, besides that, like we said, you could be a slave for a bit, but you're going to be eventually incorporated into the tribe, and you are treated well. Whereas if you're a slave in like Rome or Greece or the Americas, thousands of years later, it's significantly different in those state societies than it was for tribes.
I don't know. I don't really know about that. I don't.
I mean, I think I think that's probably how it is.
But what I do.
There's a good book, Origins of the Family, Private Property in the State. I'd recommend.
Okay.
It kind of goes into these things.
I think I've heard of that actually. I've heard of that book. I've had somebody recommend it to me before. I haven't read it. But what I will say is that in tribes, they understand the natural roles of genders as well. So therefore, there is inequality. Therefore, there is discrimination, and also there's classism, because those who have, for instance, in your natural tribes, the tribal leader, their children, once they're weaning them off of breast milk, will be the first ones to have the liver from the dead animal and also the fat. So there is a form of classism in there as well. So you can extrapolate all these things out, is my point. Like, human society and the way we function can be viewed in a microcosm in tribalism, and then you can extrapolate it out to a big nation state where we have now, and you see that human nature remains the same, and that classism is always present, racism is always present, sexism is always present. These things are natural in humanity. Inequalities are natural. Discrimination is natural. These are things that allow for, ideally, the best of the best to rise and for society to function optimally.
I don't necessarily think. I think it's a fallacy of like naturalism that we're kind of going on here. I don't necessarily think natural is good. At least I wouldn't conclude that what is natural is good for my moral system. I think that we have. I would come more from a position of evolution, and that we can evolve our moral systems and change our societies in accordance with what we think is good at the time. And I think that on the basis of that, we can create a society that's not monarchical. That has specialization and division of labor that can be positive, that can be good for people. That's not as authoritarian as you want your society to be. So once again, I really feel like higher life expectancies, literacy rates. You may argue we've gone too far with sanitation, but sanitation. There's so many different metrics that we can use for measuring how well off the society is now, that I would personally believe in, that maybe you don't, but I personally believe in, and I think that that's ultimately the direction we should be going, rather than the direction of monarchical primitivism. Maybe is that how you describe it?
I don't know that I would call it primitive at all.
I mean, it would be primitive if you want to do away with specialization and division of labor, right?
Well, I don't think that specialization is anything. I don't think that specialization is modern. I mean, the Germans have been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of taken its fruits in our capitalist system, though, and that we've seen the fullest extent of specialization and division of labor and technological innovation. And, and development of knowledge itself during this time, rather than like in the times that you're wanting to take us to?
Well, I think that the future is going to be monarchical. I really do believe that. I think that people want to have kings. They want to have a clear, distinct ruler. I think that there's a natural desire for one leader. There really is. You want to have one clear law setter, and also there's a lot of benefits to it as well. A king has to be more moral than our democratic system or republic system that we currently live in, because there is no obligation to do anything for the long term in our current system, because you have elections every 2 years for House of Representatives, you have elections every 6 years for senators, and then you have elections every 4 years for presidents. So it's very hard to have any long-term goal in that kind of system and that kind of structure. And it also allows for the possibility of massive corruption to be totally ambiguous as to who is creating the corruption. Whereas in a monarchical system, it is going to be very obvious. If not very obvious, it'll be much easier and less ambiguous to identify where the corruption is coming from. And the ruler and his family are going to be affected by his laws because they're ruling for a lifetime. And so they're going to be affected for it. They're going to have to claim responsibility for it. And also, getting back to what you said about the life expectancy, that isn't true either. That's a common myth. That anybody who's even studied Roman history a little bit will know that isn't true, because in Roman history, the elites who had homes back in rural areas, they had the same, if not longer, life expectancy that we have now. And if you go back even further into tribes, they actually have a longer life expectancy than we do, considering they're not killed by a lion or poisoned or something like that, and they don't have some of the things that we have now. But considering they are able to live their life to its in Roman society in particular, the wealthy individuals who had homes in rural areas, they did live just as long, if not longer, than we did, living out in rural areas.
You're conflating the rulers with the entire population.
Well,
essentially, in a way, you're not necessarily arguing for the existence of all the slaves and everyone else who's not wealthy and things like that, right?
No, that's not at all.
It sounds like you don't really care about those people.
No, that's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is living in a natural rural setting, because I've already mentioned the tribal people as well, which maybe you didn't catch. I did mention that tribal people, considering they don't have lions, poison, what freak event that happens out when you're living in that kind of rigid lifestyle, if they're allowed to live out their full life, they tend to live longer than we do in modern society. So I just gave you a contrast. Like, you have the wealthy elite in Rome who are more able to live out in the rural area because they lived in the civilization. They lived in the cities. But then when the cities started going to crap, they moved to the rural areas, which cities always go to crap. And then you have the tribal people who live out in rural areas for their whole life, and they're living almost as long, if not, well, they are living as long, if not longer, in some cases.
A lot of that can be attributed to diets and things like that.
100%. 100%.
Once again, the ills of our current capitalist system, but I think that too, I think if you're going to go to like the civilizations that you want to make your example, rather than just like tribal civilizations, we're going to look at like the forceful labor of slavery and things like that, which you seem to be arguing in favor of. I think that, and also if we can count like infant mortality, which is how a lot of these statistics are made, then like we're not seeing nearly as high of living standards, and then life expectancy as we see today.
The United States has the highest infant mortality rate in the first world.
Yeah, and there's also other capitalist societies that are not the United States that have significantly lower ones, like all of Europe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not going to defend, personally, I don't want to defend capitalism in any sense, it's something that we need to keep forever, but I'm not going to let a system that gets rid of specialization and division of labor, the things that makes productivity as it is in our system. I'm not going to, I'll
Slavery is natural. I mean, we're wage slaves, right? Well, I can't really consider myself a wage slave, but you're a wage. I mean, you might be a wage slave. If you have debt, you're a debt slave. So, I mean, slavery doesn't go anywhere. As we've already established in the beginning, there's many forms of slavery, but we're all slaves, and we both agree that it's a fallacy to think that you have freedom. So then, therefore, if you don't have freedom, therefore everybody's a slave to something.
Yeah, it's just a qualitative difference between one form and another.
I never once endorsed, but I've never once endorsed slavery of the kind where I'm whipping people. Never once endorsed that. It's not what I'm endorsing. I'm just saying that slavery is natural. It exists, and you will never do anything. It'll never go away.
I mean, when we say natural, like, I think it's natural in the sense that humans have the capacity to overpower another person and force them to do what they want, right? But I don't think that, once again, I think it's a fallacy of, it's a naturalistic fallacy where, like, I don't think that just because we have that capacity, we should accept it as a good thing, as something that we should do, right? I think that we can agree that, we should be able to agree that, we can create a moral system that doesn't endorse slavery of, harsher forms. And I would even argue, like, my moral system doesn't think wage slavery is something that we should, hold on to, as something we should transcend eventually. But, it just seems, so many of your arguments, I feel like, are based on what's natural is good. Like, I feel like your entire moral system could be summarized as what's natural is good. And I feel like we can easily bicker over what we consider natural or not, and go from there. But, like, do you think that's a fair summary, or do you think, like, I guess you would equate naturalism and God, right? So maybe that's
100%.
Like where this is coming from, actually, right?
Yeah, 100%. So I do think that what's natural is good. 100%.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I guess now that I kind of connect those dots in my head, that makes sense. But like, I would once again, my entire reputation is of your positions here of naturalism and everything. Then can just boil back down to the fact that I don't believe God exists. I don't believe in the Christian God, and I don't think there's significant evidence to prove the existence of such a thing, and including rejecting the unmoved mover, first mover argument, and so on. So in a way, we've almost come full circle here. But,
we have.
I'm actually heading to like a family thing right now.
Nice.
Like for Father's Day and whatnot. So I'd love to talk with you another time. Let me send you a follow real quick.
Yeah, man. Go ahead and do that. Monday through Friday.
That's a good point to end it here, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Monday through Friday, we have the Honest Hour. I host that by myself at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on Sundays, I'm here. Me and Mick are usually here every Sunday at 12 p.m.
Okay.
So, yeah, man.
I mean, I found you just on TikTok, so now that I follow you on here, whenever you go on live on here, I'll see that, and we can go from there. But it was a pleasure talking to you, man.
Likewise, you have a great day, and happy Father's Day if you're a father.
Yeah, thank you. I'll wish my father that and so on. And,
there you go.
Have a good day as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. So that was a pretty good long conversation. We had a couple other people who wanted to come in. Let's accept them in there. See what we got going on.
Hi.
Hey, official pity party. Is that the name? I'm kind of blind, so all right, cool. How's it going?
Connection. Can you hear me?
I can. Oh, well, if she wants to send another invite, we'll let her in. There we go. Let her in.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about the first point in the back? Because it's kind of vague.
Oh, yeah. So that was covering an article that we covered earlier in the show. So South Carolina is passing a bill. Well, the governor is set to sign a bill that would allow for healthcare providers to deny certain, and they're specific, procedures based on their religious belief, whether that be abortion, whether that be hormone pills, whether that be birth control. They would then have the right to deny those things if it went against their religious belief.
How do you feel about
I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that that's a fine thing. I think that the only issue would come into play where, you say, for instance, you have a religious belief that um, you're not too fond of the G's, the GAYs. Well, then, and they're dying on your operation table. I do feel that you do have a moral obligation to take care of them. So I don't think that it would fall in line for that. But for other acts such as abortion, like whether we like to, whether you agree for it or not, it definitely is something that is a personal belief. And so, if it's going to affect your conscience and affect you from doing your job, you should have the right to refuse to do it and have somebody else do it. If you don't believe in birth control, which there's a lot of reasons why not to believe in birth control, you shouldn't have to give somebody birth control. I think that hinders your ability to practice your faith in a coherent way.
So, I mean, the thing is, though, the whole point of, like, just the fact of having doctors in America and the fact that we have such a great healthcare system, well, to a point, right? I'm not saying we're perfect, obviously. But, I mean, we need to have certain regulations in place across the board because why would we want to promote inconsistent healthcare practices that, I mean, make it less reliable for people to seek healthcare? Like, how does that benefit? I mean, you become a doctor not based off your religious beliefs, but because that's your profession. Like, why are we mixing the two?
Well, that's assuming that they didn't become a doctor because they are religious and they feel that this is the work that God put them here to do.
But that doesn't have to do with their education. Like, nowhere when you go to med school are they like they make you go to church. Or
No, they're not. But you're missing my point. You're missing my point in that somebody is driven to be a doctor. A lot of people are driven to be doctors and join the healthcare field because they feel that this is what God designed them to do.
And I mean, that's a valiant effort. Like, good for them. And when you do become a doctor, you do agree that you have to follow certain procedures, regardless of your personal beliefs. Like,
100%.
You do have to give some of that up.
Which we've already agreed on. I've already conceded to that by saying if a GAY is dying on the table and somebody is religious and they don't think that GAY should live, I think that they still have a moral obligation as a human to save that person's life. But when it comes to things like abortion and birth control, those aren't absolutely necessary. Now, obviously, there are exceptions when it comes to abortion, as has always been the case under the law, which people are unaware of even before Roe v. Wade, where if the mother was going to die potentially, there's always been that option legally to abort the fetus at that point. Not the fetus, but the baby at that point. There's always been that option legally. So I think that really the issue here is not being able to be coherent. Like if you really think that abortion is murder, then you shouldn't have to be forced to commit an abortion if that is your religious stance and your philosophical stance. Now we have somebody else in here, Sunshine Days 2222.
Yes, yeah, I do believe that there is no religious right to deny healthcare. If you, let's say, you don't want to do abortions or you don't want to give birth control and it's legal in that state or country, then just don't be an OBGYN, do some other practice. But you should know when you're entering into your specialty, what the procedures are. You have to take a lot of exams to become a specialist. And so when you take those exams, you're learning about this procedure. So if you don't want to do those procedures, don't enter that specialty. It's sort of unfair to patients to go to an OBGYN and then the OBGYN say, I'm not going to do 30% of what I've been taught to do, 30% of this field that I was trained in because of my personal beliefs. It's like, then why are you even in this job? Just like be like a family physician or do some other.
Well, this is you have so many assumptions to begin with in what you're saying. You assume that 30%. I'm assuming you just said that number just to say it, but you're assuming. So you're assuming 30% is that what they do? OBGYNs are to make sure your vagina is okay, like to make sure that your insides are okay. Their job isn't necessarily to go in there and unalive a baby. Right, and so that is hindering on a belief system right now. There's scientific evidence to suggest that the baby is alive at the beginning of conception, but then also people will argue that that isn't the case. And so what we have an issue, what we then have is an issue of belief. Therefore, you shouldn't be forced to do something that you don't believe is good. And that's all that this bill is proposing. And so, therefore, as I've already mentioned earlier, you have the option to go to somebody else who may think that is right. There's always that option. So just like, if you want to go to a butcher and you ask the butcher for vegan meat, he's going to be like, I don't got vegan meat. I don't believe in vegan meat. You got to go somewhere else to get vegan meat. That's essentially the same thing, where it's like, you can still get it. I'm not going to give it to you, though. Like,
when you become a doctor, you literally choose. No one is forcing you to do that. You chose to do that. If you didn't agree with it in the first place.
But we're not talking about. We're focusing on a couple of things, literally two things, which make up such a small portion of healthcare at all. So what I've already mentioned before is if it's somebody's life's on the line, I think as a doctor, you have a moral obligation to try to keep them alive, which some people believe then abortions are then taking away a life. And so if a doctor believes that, then it would be against their own moral code and what they believe to be true to do so. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But where it becomes wrong is if you're saying, I'm not going to see you today because you don't. For instance, my wife and I, we had to switch our physicians for our children, which has been a blessing now that we go to a homeopathic physician for our children, but we rarely even go to the doctor to begin with. We were forced to leave because we would not inject our children with poison. So that right there is discrimination, and nobody has an issue with that. That right there is a religious belief, but nobody has an issue with that. That's okay. That's well accepted in society. So then if we're going to be coherent, it should then be coherent to say, if you don't want to perform abortions, if you don't want to give birth control, if you don't want to advise psychological therapy, then those are not major things. Those are minor things that are very uncommon in the healthcare profession to begin with. There's many other reasons to become a doctor. You don't become a doctor to be like, I'm ready to unalive some of the babies today. I'm going to go unalive a lot of them. That's not why you become a doctor. You become a doctor to help people in their physical ailments and hopefully prescribe them proper medication or prescribe them good diets to change their lifestyle. That's why one becomes a doctor, not because they're like, I want to give out birth control pills and unalive people. That's not why they become a doctor.
But only very specific doctors have that role, right? And I don't understand why, if you sign up for a job and you don't like the job description, you just don't choose it, right? You can't
100%.
become another kind of doctor. You can choose to save lives in another way.
100%.
It's not the patient's fault that you don't believe in your job duties. That's not their fault. They still deserve to seek the same treatment that they would with any doctor, regardless of religious beliefs. Medicine is not tied to religious belief. Me as a teacher, if I don't believe in evolution, but it's in the curriculum, I either teach it or I quit, right? Doctor is the same exact thing. I'm sorry, Sunshine, I think I interrupted you.
Oh yeah, so I was just gonna follow up that. I think the same thing. When you get the license, when you're licensed, you have to do all the procedures that are accepted within your specialty, and so you can't just go off track what that is. So if you have to do certifications, depending on your specialty, maybe every year, every couple of years, showing that you're up to date with all the procedures, with all the teaching. You can't just decide to go your own way. And so if the teaching in that profession, as OBGYN, for example, is that abortion should be provided in these instances, birth control should be provided in these instances, XYZ, you have to certify that you understand those procedures and you're going to perform them. So I don't even know how they were able to pass that law. I'm sure that's going to get repealed because it's against the very nature of the licensure. You're licensed to do these procedures, you have to know how to do them. You have to certify that you're going to do them, and then you can't just decide not to. So, you should just have your license revoked. You can be something else then. If you don't want to actually do these procedures, then become some other medical, do something else in medicine. But you can't be a licensed physician and not do what your specific specialty has agreed or normal procedures to do. It's you're not a doctor alone. You're a doctor within a community of other doctors, and so if all that community of doctors within that specialty have agreed to something, you can't just decide not to do it. But it's just not how it works, It's like a not a cartel, but like a guild, right? We all have to play the same game. They're all on the same team. You just can't go off on your own. So I don't even know how they passed that law. It's very awkward.
Well, I do agree with what you guys are saying as far as there being other subsections of being a doctor, whether or not you want to go into that profession. 100% agree with that. But then there comes a time where you're a family physician. You have the right to not then at this in this state to say, I don't want to give people birth control pills because I've read a lot of studies on it, and birth control pills damages the woman tremendously. It messes up their hormones. It tricks their body into thinking that they're having an abortion every month. It messes up their cycles, and then it also could play a role in their fertility. It could play a role in their mate selection. So I don't know that I want to prescribe it. So as opposed to denying people the service of it, they can simply just not propose that as an option and provide an alternative. You see what I'm saying? So I don't think that there's anything wrong with this whatsoever. I think that you are correct in that people will choose their professions to perform their certain deeds if they so choose. And so the doctors who don't want to commit abortions, they won't go and do those. They just won't do that. The doctors who don't want to prescribe birth control pills would have alternatives to a birth control pill because there's been other alternatives before birth control. And birth control is actually very deleterious in its effects. Most people are unaware of that, but it's now becoming more known that birth control actually isn't healthy for the woman over a long period of time. And I just want to acknowledge a comment here because I do agree with it. It's by Surviving World War III, WW3. It says, most doctors are mindless government-controlled cyborgs. I do agree with that. Most doctors are that. I mean, the Hippocratic Oath has changed drastically. Now doctors can be disbarred if they suggest a diet change before they prescribe you pills. Fact, at least in the United States. That's pretty disgusting. And then he also writes, same with teachers, brainwash and control. I do agree with that as well. I know Official Pity Party said that she's in the educational system, so she may be the exception to the rule. She seems very intelligent, very respectful and articulate in what we're talking about here. So, but as far as most teachers go, I would agree with that statement entirely. But that would be my position on this whole issue, and that's what that is referring to up there: religious right to deny health care. Is that article specifically of what's going on in South Carolina?
I do want to validate, by the way, that like I believe that parents should be able to decide whether or not they want to vaccinate kids. Like doctors should be suggesting things and not forcing, if that makes sense. Like if the patient doesn't believe
let's be careful on our verbiage here. Let's just we know what you're talking about, so let's not say that word again. I get banned all the time.
Sorry.
It's all good. The V word that you just said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very touchy. We get banned off of TikTok for no reason all the time for conversations like this. So
For sure.
anyway, yeah.
I guess I would like to follow up that, I think it's a very dangerous slippery slope, and I hope that whatever this law is revoked, because I think people are making the argument from the perspective of things that are currently in the news, like the abortion argument or birth control. But the end of this is not clear. You know what I mean? So for example, like the argument, like a doctor doesn't want to prescribe birth control or doesn't want to have an abortion. Those who don't support either of those things are like, okay, great, yay, a doctor can make that choice. Do you know that doctors in America come from all various backgrounds and perspectives and religious beliefs? So it may never end. So a doctor might say, I'm not going to treat you for an STD, I'm not going to treat you for any sexually transmitted disease because you're engaging in sex before marriage, and I don't believe in that. And my belief is you shouldn't engage in that, so therefore I cannot treat you. And that would cause many problems for people, right? That could be applied to men and women. So women may not be the only victims of this sort of thinking. A doctor might say, I'm just not going to help you. You shouldn't have been engaging in sex before marriage. Anyway, I'm not going to help you with your pregnancy, with your partner's pregnancy, because I don't believe you should have been engaging in sex before marriage anyway. So I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to give you any advice on how to take care of this child. You shouldn't be even having.
Well, the law doesn't even suggest any of that. It's just specific procedures.
So why do we stop with that? Why don't we just have the doctor has these beliefs, and whatever those beliefs are, they can apply it to? Because maybe they strongly believe people should not be engaging in sex before marriage. They strongly believe it's wrong.
But it's not a medical procedure. But it's not a medical procedure. It's just not.
So yeah, they say they're having to medical block. I don't want to prescribe. I don't want to give you advice on vitamins. I don't want to help give birth advice to the doctor.
Yeah. So if that's the case, I mean, it's yeah. So let's assume that we live in that world. there's going to be another doctor, as you've already suggested. Many doctors in America come from various backgrounds, beliefs, etc. So you have that issue, you can find another doctor. If that becomes the law, it's really easy to find other doctors, really easy. So as opposed to trying to force everybody to believe the same thing, you can find another doctor. It's relatively easy. There's a list of them. Your insurance company, if you have insurance, will provide you a list of doctors in your area, and then you can do an interview. I mean, you should be with a doctor who aligns with your belief systems anyway. You shouldn't be with a doctor who doesn't align with your belief systems, I would say, as your everyday care physician. You try to find somebody who believes in what you believe in. That way they can not only prescribe you what they think is best, but on a conscious level, you guys will have far less disagreements. We got somebody else that wants to hop in here.
Yeah, I guess I understand your perspective, but for me, it's like if I go to a doctor, I don't care. I mean, I understand they come from these backgrounds, but I could really care less what they think or their philosophies or their views of the world and their mindset. It doesn't matter. What I care about is that they have been trained to treat me. They know how to do that. They're up to date with procedures, and they will give me the highest medical treatment. Like, I don't care if you believe that the world was created in 5 days. I don't care if you believe that it doesn't matter. Do you know how to perform this treatment? Are you going to do that? Are you going to do it properly? And this law seems to say, well, that's not actually the main thing a doctor does. The main thing a doctor does is push their beliefs down their patients' throats. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, your doctor is there to do their job. It's like, let's say any other profession, this would never fly. I think it's only because it's relating to women's bodies that this makes any sense. Any other profession, would you apply this? Like, I'm an engineer, but I don't believe in gravity, so I'm not going to build your building this way. And I'm allowed to be a licensed engineer and refuse to do certain things because they're against my views of how the world should be. I believe the earth is flat, so I'm not going to be an architect to build this building in this way, and I'm still going to be a licensed architect.
Well, what you're saying is not fair analogies at all. They're just not. I mean, there's a lot of theories out there first off, gravity is a theory, right? Gravity is a theory. It is nothing but a theory. So there's engineers out there who are flat earthers, and they build stuff all the time. And there are architects out there that are flat earthers, and they make beautiful buildings all the time using their flat earth model. I'm not claiming which one's right or wrong. I'm just saying that I know engineers personally. I personally know engineers who are flat earthers, and they still are able to do their job, regardless of whether or not they believe in gravity. So.
I guess I didn't know that. I was sort of throwing an outlandish theory, but I didn't know that they were.
Yeah, and once again, I'm not saying that I'm over here agreeing with them or their perspective, but there are people out there who have these, what some would call extreme worldviews, and they still do their job just fine. But I'm going to let Seth Forrest talk in here. So official pity party, unless you have anything else to say, or Sunshine, we have a couple other people who want to jump in. I want to let them in, so I'm going to get you guys out and let the new people in. Thank you guys for coming in. I really do appreciate that.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, sweet. I just had a question as it relates to the religious issue. I have a master's in healthcare administration, and generally I believe that on most issues you should not have a religious right to deny healthcare. I do think in the case of abortion, I think that's an extremely personal decision. I'm pro-choice, but I wouldn't expect a physician to perform an abortion if they didn't believe in it. But my question is, I guess, like, where you draw the line. So I guess it's an extension of the earlier conversation. For gay people, especially, are you aware of like PrEP and PEP?
No.
Okay, so PrEP is like something you would take as a high-risk population, generally gay people, take in order to prevent HIV. But you can also take PEP if you have already had high-risk sex within, so unprotected sex, or had like a condom break or something like that, within 48 hours, and essentially it's similar to like a morning after pill to prevent HIV. If you were to go see a physician, a gay person were to see a physician, and they, were trying to get this pill prescribed to them, and the physician were to decline that, saying, citing, look, my religious belief is this is in promotion of, gay sex so I don't want to give this to you. That might, I mean, they have a very limited time amount to find that resource before it becomes like void for them. If you get it after 48 hours, it's generally not effective. So in that scenario, how would you advise, you know, or where would you stand on that?
I mean, personally, I am against the, a GAY lifestyle. I don't think that, I wouldn't go out and persecute anybody. But if you're against it, find another doctor. It's really that simple.
But you have such a small amount of time. I mean, the difference.
And also,
especially if you're in like a rural community, you
well,
might not be able to find a doctor. And especially, you might have 3 doctors who all say, you know, I don't want to do this. I don't believe in this type of lifestyle. Then you're essentially condemning that person to having, you know, to the possibility of having AIDS when you could have treated it and not given them or any, related STDs. So it's like.
Well, to begin with,
very dangerous. Like, just because someone is born a certain way, or
I don't believe that.
So, do you get what I'm saying?
Well, I would say that first off, AIDS has never been proven to be real. Actually, in a lab, it's never been isolated in the lab. Neither is HIVs. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, from my perspective, I would say it would be a good incentive to change your lifestyle. Then.
So I am gay, and it's definitely not a lifestyle choice. You're born with it. You absolutely now you can say that you can choose to have sex with whomever, but you're gay regardless. So I mean, fundamentally I'm going to disagree with you there. But to me, this becomes the question. I guess I'm more concerned. You have the right to believe whatever you want to believe, but when it infringes on like my right to receive health care, like that's when it becomes very concerning to me because you can't.
Don't you think it's kind of odd?
To help people, then it becomes very dangerous when you're like, well, I want to help people, but not you particular kind of person. Or even if you say someone with a lifestyle, that's still very dangerous.
So isn't it kind of odd that I can have unprotected sex with my wife and never have to go to the doctor about it, but the opposite has to? That's weird. Maybe it's because it's not natural and it's not normal.
You do realize that before AIDS was an issue. I mean, so gay people were having sex in 1900 and they weren't having that issue. So yeah, we deal with new diseases and stuff as they come up. But I mean, it's the nonsensical argument. And also, like I said, if you're having if the condom breaks or something, you could still have the same issue. It's not a matter of.
I don't believe in condoms either. I don't believe in condoms either. I think that they're a result of the LGBT movement.
Okay, well, I mean, considering that the LGBT community wasn't even,
condoms came out after AIDS.
A lot of the words weren't invented prior to the fact that we had like condoms. I mean, that doesn't.
Condoms came out after AIDS. I mean, condoms, as we know them today, came out after AIDS.
We have had contraception in some sort of way.
I'm not talking about contraception. I'm not talking about all kinds of them. I'm talking about a specific kind. But anyway, so to summarize my whole take on this, right now I'm just being provocative, to be honest with you, for engagement. But I do believe what I'm saying. But as far as getting to like the point of the doctor, I think that at that point, you find a new doctor, and if you can't, you can't. It kind of sucks. But Phil, I'm not even going to say your name, but the other guy that's in here.
No, it's all good, man. A lot of people, I do it for the show. Like
right.
I just got right there. Like I feel that, yeah, we hit off the rest of your day. Great. That's why I do that. But this has been a very good topic. Now, my belief on this, when doctors go into the field to become doctors, and they all take a hypocritical oath, do no harm, treat everybody as an equal, this, that, the other thing. I think this idea of a doctor refusing medical care due to your beliefs, however you It's like, you know,
I agree.
There was one baker in a state who refused to bake a cake because, you know, he said, I don't believe that lifestyle is right. And that became this big old national news, you know, and everybody, like, you know, but as far as the healthcare, I don't think a doctor would say, well, I don't think that homosexuality is right, so I'm not going to treat you or prescribe you this medication or this, that, the other thing. And if that did happen, that would be a very, very slim margin of those medical professionals. So that particular topic, I think, is kind of null and void.
I do agree with you that it would be fringe.
As far as the healthcare system that we have, well, that needs to be revamped a little bit as far as I'm concerned. Doctors charge way too much for, you know, the procedures that they do. And that's because our healthcare insurances and whatnots, they take the price, you know. You got Blue Cross Blue Shield, one of the best health insurances in the United States, and they say, well, this procedure will give you this much money for. So the guy going in who doesn't have insurance, he's getting charged this much money because that's what Blue Cross Blue Shield says. That's where that needs to change. As far as our medical things, I think we need to open up the medical market to the free market and let doctors dictate the prices that they want to charge. And hear me out on this, okay? Elective surgeries such as breast augmentation, nose jobs, all those things are not covered by insurance companies because it's an elective surgery. And when they first started, like when tummy tucks and breast implants and all, you had to pay buku money to get these things. Well, now you have all these doctors who are in that field doing tummy tucks, this, that, and the other thing, and they're running specials. Buy one tit, you get one free. You know, but the price itself has dropped for any kind of elective surgery, even LASIK surgery. When that first became a thing, you know, it was thousands of dollars. Now, we do one eye, you get the other eye for free. You know, we're going to cut it down in half. So, but all these doctors and these elective surgeons are competing for business. So, if all doctors were competing for business, I believe we would see a much lower cost for our medical health, and more doctors willing to do things that, you know, they might not feel comfortable with because, well, I don't agree with your lifestyle, but I'm trying to make a buck, so I'm going to prescribe you this medication.
Yeah. So the only thing that I would really want to touch on there, I mean, I do agree that the healthcare system needs to change, but I would say that I don't agree that the free market should enter healthcare at all. You know, if you look at the etymology of healthcare, you know, you go back to our hospitals rather. In the English from the early 15th century, you know, it meant the sense of a charitable institution to house and maintain the needy. So hospitals are charitable. They're supposed to be, by definition, charitable institutions. So but I am conflicted as far as I don't want a state-run hospital either, but I do think healthcare overall should be essentially free for the necessities. Now, as far as elective surgeries, that's a whole nother thing. But as far as the necessity, we should have a free healthcare system.
So also, if I could jump in here, like I'm a proponent of universal healthcare, and I'm fine with state-run healthcare as well because I think it works. We pay double right now to not insure all of our people, terms of, we should, especially for needed procedures, there's no reason why we would, where we shouldn't dictate based off of your ability to pay. If
100%.
you get a procedure, get that procedure. It should be as simple as that. But also, when we're able to insure everyone, we bring down costs. And I think that's what confuses a lot of people is we're already paying for everyone, because if somebody needs care right now, if they break their, or I don't know if they break their leg, if they have a heart attack and they need treatment, the hospital can't refuse them, even if they don't have insurance. So they're going to get treatment, and they will most likely, if they don't have insurance, they're going to go bankrupt from the care that they needed. Then in order to recoup those costs, the insurance company, the hospital are going to raise rates on everyone else. So we're already paying for everyone, we're just not doing it efficiently. So if we cover everyone, no one goes without care. That doesn't mean it's a perfect system. There are flaws with it, but the universal systems are, widely the best. That's why only America really hasn't shifted to it. Everyone else has shifted to some sort of universal system.
The only fault I find in the universal health care is you're leaving it up to the government to decide what treatment you're going to receive. If you are 60 years old and you are a smoker, you've been drinking for the last 40 years, and you need a procedure done, they're going to look at you as why should we waste our resources on this guy when he's probably going to be dead in another 5 years due to his lifestyle? So we're going to deny the medical treatment.
Yeah, so I want to.
That happens in countries where they have universal health care. They look at you as you're this, you're that. We may or may not treat you based upon that. So leaving up to the government what kind of health care I receive or am eligible to get, that's where I find a problem with the universal health care thing. If I'm 60 years old and able to pay a physician to treat me for whatever I did to my body because of the lifestyle I led, I should be able to get treated for by being able to pay a doctor who's willing to treat me, at a fair price.
Right, but a lot of people, so universal care does not necessarily mean abolishing the entire, private or elected system. There would still be doctors operating for certain, private procedures.
But people who can't afford those procedures, that's what I'm saying.
The procedures now, though. So we have we have a sizable amount of our population who dies every year because now they could technically get the care. If you have a heart attack, they could get the care. But a lot of them, if they have something that isn't necessarily what they deem to be life-threatening, they will avoid the care because they want to avoid bankruptcy, and thus they end up dying from a preventable illness. So, under the system we have currently, we have more people dying due to, preventable illness than really anywhere else in the world that's, comparable in terms of, being an advanced society. So,
well, I want to interject that Phil is I get what you're saying, Seth. I really do. We are in total agreement that people who need surgery, for instance, I don't know, you've mentioned you broke your leg. I think that should be, free for you to get your leg checked out, for you to get whatever reconstructive surgery you need, whatever you need in order to fix your leg. I think that should be taken care of. However, Phil also has a really good point in that a lot of the health issues that we experience today are due to our own choices. So then that comes in with an issue where do we want to treat people who are neglecting their health? Do we want to treat people who are, as far as on the dole, paid for by the government? Do we want to treat those people? Do we want to give those people access to all this stuff if they're causing their heart disease, if they're causing their diabetes, if they're causing for their leg to be chopped off? You know what I mean? Should those people, because they've been smoking, because they've been eating a ho-ho every day for 50 years,
So this is, you're making a really good point, and I see where you're coming from on this. I think what I would say to that is if you look at universal systems versus spend more on preventative care. So because they have incentive to, right? Like here, our insurance companies actually make more money by having people who are sicker.
Yes, I agree.
If the government runs the system, then they have the ability to. They're gonna try to pay as little as possible. They're gonna do it through preventative medicine. We spend about 3% on preventative medicine. The average universal system spends much more, closer to 15% on that. So but I agree with you totally that the issue is if we were to switch to a system, we would have to undergo a period where yes, people who have made bad life choices are going to get care. That's there's going to be a transitionary period where that would happen and where there would likely be larger wait times. But at the same time, it's better in the long run for us to do that than to just have people, dying because they can't afford it.
Yeah, I can see that, but the only issue is, what incentive do you have one to then change their lifestyle? Because tough love works.
If we switch?
Yeah, tough love does work. So it's like, well, if you have failed to take care of your health, and by the way, we have a question in here asking, are you jabbed? I'll say that because I don't know exactly what I can say. With the latest one, no. I do know that my parents were unfortunately brainwashed, and yeah, they did inject me with some poison. Should we deny health care to those who do not get? 100% not, because they don't work. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with that. I got side because I want to address some of the comments in here too.
I mean, to me, deny health care to those who chose to get it and are now suffering these complications from it.
Yeah, there's actually a German, really quick, there's a German insurance company that is now denying service to anybody who's had a negative side effect to the current injection.
Yeah.
And I believe there's even life insurance companies that are denying it.
Some really bad side effects to that thing. So.
But let's be careful how we talk about this subject, because it's I've been banned too many times off of TikTok. So
I'm quite aware of the things we can and cannot say talking about this particular topic. I believe that might have been what caused my last account to get the permit. So that's a touchy subject. But,
it is.
There's been so many reported side effects from it that haven't been put out there for us to see.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much. I'm not trying to be rude. I love these kind of conversations, but I want to be very careful on what we're talking about as far as that goes. So, let's switch it up a little bit, because EN7MA7 N7, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. He asked a question, and maybe you guys have some opinions on it. And his question was, which crimes are worthy of being tracked? And that's based on the second, there you go. And that's based on the second bullet point there. And so it is based on this article that Mick, he's my co-host for the show, but he had to go. We're both fathers, but he had stuff to do with his family and my family. They're taking a nap in the room right now. Then we'll be getting going. But anyway, so this is the article that Mick had, and it's Akron police getting high-tech cameras to track down criminals. So it says Akron police, which we're from Northeast Ohio. That's where we reside. So this is why he picked this topic. Akron police will soon have high-tech help identifying and tracking down criminals. City Council has approved a $400,000 expenditure to install 145 flock cameras throughout the city. Preliminary identifying high crime areas. During their June 6 meeting, Police Chief Stephen Milet told Commissioner that the cameras amount to a force multiplier, quote, and then here's another quote. It says, there have been several pieces of technology during my career that have really turned out to be a game changer, and I think that this is one of them. This camera system would serve as a force multiplier for the police department, primarily to identify people who engage in criminal activity. So what do you guys think about that?
In Detroit, which is where I'm from, pretty much. I live in the Detroit metro area. But I know in the city of Detroit, they a couple years ago released what they call the Green Light Project, where they installed all these cameras all over town in these high-risk areas, to where they can monitor businesses and for illegal activities. It fails on a constant because they have one or two people watching 150 screens, and there's been numerous instances over the last few months where in these green light areas where these cameras are focused on, crimes are still being committed, and the response time is still at like an hour before a cop shows up, because the one or two people monitoring these hundreds of monitors don't necessarily see what's going on this one. So cameras for tracking, I'm not a big fan on that one. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie Eagle Eye.
I haven't.
But no, it's a pretty good movie. And it kind of relates to all these cameras that monitor and track, and basically what it boiled down to is they set up an AI system to monitor all these cameras, because of course it's too much for a human to do, so they got AI to do it. Well, you know, we all know what happens in those sci-fi movies when AI gets involved. They start taking over and whatnot. But,
right. Yeah, we had a comment here, which, by the way,
there's so many issues with the cameras and monitoring of things. Not necessarily that they're all bad, but
right. Yeah, really quick. I'm originally from Michigan myself. Actually, I'm from Battle Creek, Michigan. That's where I was born, and then I grew up mostly in the Kalamazoo area. I just mentioned that because we have somebody in the comments saying, "Yeah, that's a strong Michigan accent," talking about you. And then he also had another question: which criminal activity? So, do you know, like, specifically, like, what criminal activity? I'm from Troy. Nice. What criminal activity they were looking for with those cameras? Because in this one for Akron, they're not specifying what criminal activity. They're just stating that it'll be a force multiplier for the police in order to monitor and crack down on criminal activity. But I'm not sure if you're aware of any specific crimes that they're looking for.
Well, I think it all
with the green lights, with the green light cameras we have around here.
Yeah.
B&Es, robberies, like most of these cameras are set up on businesses, so when those businesses are closed, they can be monitored by the police to prevent people from breaking in, stealing their stuff when nobody's there, vandalizing. A lot of gas stations, they're set up around because that's where a lot of the crime happens. Carjackings, robberies, they all happen at gas stations throughout Detroit in the middle of the night. Somebody stops to go get gas, and next thing you know, 3 people are beating the hell out of them and taking their car and money. So that's where most of these cameras are set up. So they're looking for any activity that looks suspicious or any criminal activity happening. So that's what these cameras are supposed to be monitoring.
And Seth,
businesses and places around these businesses.
Gotcha.
So
Seth, you had something that you wanted to add in. If you could add in what you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say that to me, this is an issue where it does depend. I think if it's mainly in a business, center where the businesses are in essence asking the police, we've had a high crime rate, we need help with more cameras and everything. To me, I don't have a big issue with that. I mean, I'm not someone who's too worried about a surveillance state or whatever. I mean, I think the government has to provide some element of security. But I do also think that if you're targeting high crime residential areas, then that is kind of can't just set up cameras that, because someone might not have the ability to afford to live outside of a high crime area. And so now you're going to be essentially like looking in on them, doing some things that, and you might be looking out for crime, but you might, you don't have like an invitation to just look into their private life. And I think that gets into a tricky area. So I think this is one of those cases where it does depend really on where it is. Is this like a business center or is this a residential area? And it gets tricky with that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see some benefits to the technology. However, I can't help but think it may lead into something more nefarious in the future. And ultimately, I mean, we are heading towards smart cities. That is the goal of transitioning over into a smart city. So that's just a basic surveillance city in which you would be living in, because everything would be monitored from, you'd have digital twins of your home. So somebody would own the data to your home and everything that goes into what you do in your home, your motion, your activities, your usage of bathroom, and then also what you do in your neighborhood. All those things would be monitored. And Seth, I do agree with you that the government does have an obligation to provide some level of security for its citizens. But then the question is, when is it? Yeah, okay, fair enough point. We have a comment here that says we're scared of being monitored while we carry smartphones around and use TikTok. 100%. 100%. I get the irony of it. I really do. It is pretty comical, because on a quick note, I've heard a lot of people get fearful of microchips, like, oh, they're going to come and do something with microchips. But then it's like, do you have a smartphone? Like, why do they need microchips if they can just track you from your smartphone?
Right. I think the big question, and I would be curious to see how you all feel on this, is a lot of, to me, the question, because we do carry around, like, our data is being shared, like, whether, we consent to it or not, it's being shared. I think the question is, big companies, big corporations are profiting off this, off that. They're using it to find trend lines, to find analytics. So one of the things that I do actually in my house is that we've like contracted with like, I believe it's a subsidiary of Google or something that Google owns. And so they actually have the ability to try like see what we watch on TV, have like an app on our phone. So essentially we sell our data to Google and they pay us like it's not much, it should be more, but it's like $100 each month for us to do this. And I think it was like a trial program that they're trying. But to me, I already know my data is being used. I just want to be paid fairly for it. Is my I want the ability to block out some things, but I understand that the reality is we're living in the 21st century. There's going to be some element they're going to be able to see and track my data and suggest advertisements, etc.
There is a individual who is I think he's called a data activist, and he's trying to stop what he calls data colonialization, which is what you're describing, and that is the use it. Basically all these companies are extracting our data and they are using it and making money from it, etc. But what about us? And so he actually has started an institution. It's called the Human Obsolescence Institution or Institute. And basically he is revolutionizing. I'm not saying I agree with this, but it is sort of revolutionary in what he's doing, the way data is extracted. So basically you're hooked up, you're wrapped up in this kind of like wiry straitjacket type deal, but you're not really like prevented from moving around. I guess the best way to think of it is like a gurney, I think is what it's called. And then like your armbands, your blood pressure armbands, and doctors, they have wires all over them. And while you're scrolling through your phone, whatever that be, and using energy, your body's emitting heat. And so that heat is then generating some form of cryptocurrency. And then you are then paid by your time scrolling and by the data that you're giving. And then you're also emitting heat that could be repurposed. I'm not saying I agree with this at all. This is getting into like Matrix territory. But there are people who are trying to address it, is the point that I'm making, because you do raise a good concern. And then I also want to just bring up this point here. We have somebody commented, this guy's thinks a combination of the Minority Report and big data is good. I don't think anybody here is saying that that's a good idea. Nobody here is saying that that's a good idea whatsoever. It's just the way of the world. I mean, that is where we're heading. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have any comments on that.
Well, if I could comment on one thing that I heard both of you echo back and forth, that the government has a duty to protect us. That's not true, nor should they have the duty to protect us. Us as citizens have the right to protect each other. Government. I'm a libertarian. I don't like government overreach. I think they are way too involved in our business, and the less government involvement, the better off we are as a people. I think more power should be turned back over to the states to make their own decisions, their own laws. The people of those states have a much bigger voice when it comes to state issues than when it comes to federal issues. None of us got the chance to vote on the billions that got sent over to Ukraine. That was a decision they made, but that's our money. So,
what do you think the role of government is then?
The original idea of the federal government was to set up a stable line between the states. We have let the federal government have way too much overreach.
Well, I'm just referring to government in general. What is the government's role?
Honestly, I don't know. They take our money and they delegate it out to wherever they see fit. I mean, that's about all I see the government doing. They pass laws that restrict us from being people. And I mean, some of the laws that they have, I mean, okay, well, but those are common sense laws. You shouldn't drink and drive. It's a hazard.
So what you're describing is governments sometimes create laws to protect the greater good?
But the laws that they create to protect the greater good are unnecessary laws. Like,
who enforces them, though?
We shouldn't drink and drive. Now, should there be a penalty for it? Yes. Should there be a law saying, well, you can't? No, because we all know you can't drink and drive. That's freaking ignorant.
But then who's going to
get into an accident? If you do and get into an accident, then yeah, you should be held accountable.
Yeah, but then
if I make the conscious decision to go down 8 blocks away to the bar and sit there for 12 hours drinking, so I'm not going to do that. And then make the conscious decision to get in my vehicle and drive home. And along the way, I am pulled over. I didn't cause no accident. I didn't do nothing wrong. I just got pulled over. Well, I'm DUI, get thrown in jail. Now, if I make it to my doorstep, no harm, no foul, right?
But who said
that law saying I can't drink and drive is only going to stop the drunk driver if they get pulled over between point A and point B. So unless they get to an accident, and then when they get to an accident, of course, you're messed. If I cause an accident and I'm sober, I'm getting some kind of trouble.
Yeah, so really quick, I know Seth has something he wants to comment on this, but really quick. We agree that there should be rules in society, right?
Yes, there should be rules in society. I'm not disagreeing on that. I'm not like an anarchist. We
cool.
Don't need to just
so
walk and do whatever we want.
Cool. So we agree that there should be rules in society. And so then if there should be rules in society, there should be a institution or individuals enforcing those rules, correct?
On a state level, not on a federal level.
Well, not all governments are structured the same way we're structured. So I'm just talking fundamentally here on a universal level. So there should be somebody to say, hey, you can't do those things, right? And so therefore, there would have to be a need. So that would mean the government is designed, at least in part, to protect people.
Yes. However, if I am able to operate under conditions and get my vehicle from point A to point B safely without hurting anybody else, then no harm, no foul, no crime, right?
Yeah, everybody knows that if you don't get caught. Go ahead.
Do it again and again and again until something happens. Like, okay, so for me,
Then I'm held accountable for that. But see,
Hang on, Phil. Let's set.
Crimes and they get away with them on a daily basis, and that just encourages them to, hey, I got away with it last time. I'm going to go and do it again, and eventually they mess up and they get caught doing the crime that they did.
Right. So let's go ahead.
Drink and drive. There have been times where I've been drunk and have thought about driving, but the possibility of a DUI keeps me from doing it because the laws are on the books, and I know if I get caught doing that, regardless of whether I injure someone, number one is wrong, but number two, it also there's a huge penalty with that. I'm going to take my driver's license. They're going to take my driver's license away for a period of time. Like, I know that, so I don't do it. It's a good preventative measure.
Yeah, and maybe drinking and driving isn't the best analogy to use for this particular topic, but well, yeah, like you just mentioned driver's license. Like, why do we even need one of those?
See, Phil,
perfectly fine. I have to have a license to drive. I got to pay a tax to the state to drive.
Yeah.
So every year I got to get my driver's license renewed, or every couple years rather. And then I have to pay a tax to get my tag renewed. Then I have to pay a tax for the gasoline that I use. Last I checked, I'm free to travel as a citizen.
But do you want roads?
There was roads before there was taxes. They might not have been the best, but there were still roads.
But we live in a current society. I mean, I'll just say I'm a leftist. I'm probably going to disagree with you on a lot of issues, but the premise of just not living in a society where we have, taxes or where we don't pay for things that are, first of all, if I am have a driver's license, I mean, and we saw this at the Libertarian Convention. I honestly did not think this was an opinion that really people had, that we just should not have driver's license. But I mean, even Gary Johnson said it. People, we should have a baseline competency in driving in order to have a driver's license. I want to know that people can exercise their vehicles correctly if they're going to be with me, because if they can't and they plow into me, then.
But there are many people who have driver's licenses that can't drive and get into accidents every freaking day because they're ignorant.
Right, but so it doesn't protect against everything, but it protects against a lot. I'm not saying that it prevents everything, but it does prevent a lot of accidents by forcing people to take a driver's test, and if they fail, that they don't.
I have never gotten to an accident, so why do I need a license to drive?
All right, so let me interject here, because I think that you guys are both raising good points, and I do want to say, Phil, for instance, on a natural level, I would consider myself, as far as my philosophy of the world, as a naturalist. So on a natural level, you're 100% right. Nobody can tell me whether or not I can drive. I can quite literally get into my car and drive anywhere I want to. Literally, driver's license or not, that has no bearing literally on me being able to drive, right? We can all agree on that. I have the right, as a natural born man, as a living human being, there are things that I don't need a government to tell me that I can and can't do. Right, so we can say that with driving. However, if we're going to be active citizens in a society, there then has to be structure, and then there has to be something in which you're willing to sacrifice in order to be a participant in that society. And so driver's license happened to be one of those things. I know people personally who have driven for years without driver's license. They've won every court case because on a natural law level, you don't need a driver's license, right? But then they eventually, because they were tired of going to court, even though they won every time they got caught driving without a license, because there is a natural law that the court does abide by. Most people aren't aware of that. But what they ended up doing was saying it's going to be a lot easier for me to get my driver's license because it's more convenient in society. And so I think the point is, if we want to live in a society, we want to have some cohesion and we want to have standards, which is what Seth is talking about. I'm far from a leftist, although I am sympathetic to some of the views like college debt forgiveness, debt forgiveness, healthcare. We seem to agree on some basic stuff, but there are standards that are required in a society in order for it to be cohesive and functional. And with a libertarian view, this is why libertarians, I mean, no offense to you, but this is why libertarians will never run a country, is because there is no cohesion in their political philosophy. It leads to do as you will. It leads to do as thou wilt is libertarianism, and it's a bad deal.
As long as you don't infringe on my rights.
But then somebody's always going to be infringed.
On me as a person.
But somebody's always going to try and do that because that's the way of the world, unfortunately. I mean, this is why we have property laws. This is why we have the legal system we have. So that way we don't have to settle it in the old dual way where it's like, all right, you step on my property line, I get to unalive you. Then we have a comment here. It says libertarianism leads to my personal army versus yours, which is bigger. 100% true. Libertarianism, whether they realize it or not, ends up logically devolving into anarchy. And then anarchy, you then get some structure. I mean, if you look at Mexico is, in a current state where the cartels are challenging the government and the cartels are winning against the government. And so then you get a form of libertarianism.
I would also say, I wanted to hit on was that it is not mutually exclusive to have like a government that is protecting you, and then you're also protecting yourself. So I'm a leftist, but I still believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that you have the right to, own a gun and protect yourself. But the government also has the right to protect, or we have a right of the government to protect us from certain things. I mean, that's why.
Well, the Supreme Court already nullified that when they said that the police departments have no duty to protect citizens. So if the police have no duty to protect citizens and they are a government agency, what is the government? Why do you think the government has any right to protect you as well?
So would you prefer we disband the military?
I'm not sure. The military, I'm not sure exactly what purpose they are serving other than to fight wars in other countries right now. I know they're supposed to be to protect us and this, that, and the other thing, and preserve freedom, but they're doing it in places that aren't here, and have been for as long as I've been alive. I don't remember last time there was a war fought here in the United States.
But there's also a difference between like having a critique of the military. I mean, I, as a leftist, have many problems with the military. I think it's overfunded. I think we get into stupid wars we shouldn't be in. But there's a lot of things that I disagree with the military on. But that doesn't mean I question the military's like right to exist. Like, yes, we need a defensive force if we're attacked. Like, and yes, it can be oppressive. There's a lot of things you can question about it, but to me, like, this is such, and I don't want to, I'm not belittling your belief as you have the right to believe it, but it's a very fringe belief to think that we should just not have a military, or that,
if you want to look back through history and what the military, the United States military has done to people in the United States, there was the Trail of Tears, and Black Wall Street, and there's many other instances that can be pointed out. So, is the United States military really a good thing, or are we protecting us, or are we doing the bidding of whatever the government says that those people need to do?
Well, I think that gets into whether the military is, again, it's good. I am very critical of what the United States military is. It's overthrown democracies. It has done things that are absolutely terrible. be, our own citizenry, or even have like, our own citizenry joining into standing militias or whatever, then we're still eventually going to have issues. We're not going to be a cohesive force necessary to defeat, an actual threat.
Well, I will say that, Afghanistan has done very well, just basically having militias fighting off the Soviet Union in the United States. So they, although I am with you, Seth, I am with you. We need militaries. Militaries are very important. We got somebody else that wants to hop on here. Let me bring him in. But Seth, Phil, if you guys don't have anything else that you want to add, I'm gonna get you out of here. We've had a good discussion. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good conversation.
Yes. You guys have a great day.
We'll talk to you later.
Yep. You guys have a great day and happy Father's Day. What is going on?
What's up, dude? Hey, so I assume you're an American libertarian?
No, I am not. Not even close.
Well, so I was just gonna. Where do you fall on the political spectrum?
I would identify as a Christian nationalist that advocates for monarchy.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna get off your live then.
All right. See you. I guess I triggered him with my political views, but that's okay. Let's see. I'm open to debating it all. I also disagree with suggestions. They say you shouldn't have a suppressor. Let's see if there's any other questions in here. Libertarianism. Yeah. So it happens. Yeah, it does happen. So I throw a lot of people off with my political view. It's very unorthodox, very uncommon. What does one? Yeah, bruh, this guy is more concerned with state than the people around him. Random people will violate your rights much faster than the state. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Hearing protection. That is a fair argument for suppressors, I guess. It's not that. She's fine. It's all good. You can probably hear my daughter in the background. She's wide awake and talkative right now over there with my wife. Earplugs. Yeah, you could use earplugs as well. That is something that is true. But I've had a lot of comments on this thing right here, so I want to bring it up. It's the third bullet point. Leftists attack pregnancy centers, because apparently a lot of people aren't aware of this. And they're denying that it's even true. So let's see. It says, radical abortion group Jane's Revenge threatens domestic terrorism. So there's been a lot of attacks ever since the Roe v. Wade leak has come out of pregnancy centers. And so apparently this is the group that is behind it. So for instance, let's see here. I think there's photos in this article specifically. So right here, at least 23 pro-life organizations have been attacked, firebombed, or vandalized in recent weeks. So about 23. Wisconsin had one attack, Oregon had a few attacked, and other state or 3, I believe. Yeah, so in total, it looks like there's been at least 23 as of June 13th. So yeah, there is legitimate attacks going on against pro-life organizations, which it's kind of funny because Joe Biden warned that there would be a summer of violence, and that's apparently what we're getting here is that summer. But I do know that they're going to be making a decision very soon as to what will be done on that front. So we'll see how that plays out. But even if it does get repealed on a federal level, most people are also unaware of the fact that it doesn't do away with the right to get an abortion. It simply just reverts back to the states. People hate Tim Pool, but he covered some of the attacks. Yeah, you can't infringe on women's rights to choose without pushback and accept it. I don't think that it's a woman's right. I really don't. I don't even think it's a right whatsoever. Although I don't know. I have a weird view on abortion. I've been conflicted. A part of me is like, if you want to end your bloodline, do it. Do it. Your bloodline does not deserve to continue. if that's your view. You can't stop it from happening. This is true. I mean, it does happen throughout history where people would get rid of their babies and stuff, for sure. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to happen, but it's going to be far less. And I think that the argument individuals like myself come from is more so, how moral do you want the society to be? And we don't think it's very moral. However, like I've said, I've sort of become conflicted because I'm like, it's going to happen regardless. We're just arguing to make it unsafe and illegal. Well, actually, I think there's an interesting statistic out that the same amount of women have perished in childbirth as they have under the knife of unaliving their baby, which is rather interesting. So it's not really that it makes it safe or anything. Protecting the future from mass waves of poverty is moral, in my opinion. Well, poverty is subjective to begin with. As I've stated before, there are plenty of people who live in quote-unquote poverty that are extremely happy. So I don't think that wealth is a sign of, somebody should have children. I think that it's more so characters, and your characteristics and morals that should determine whether or not you have children. It went from safe, legal, and rare to just because, though. 100%. So I don't want to cover that too much, though, just because I know it's a touchy subject, and I'm trying not to get banned. We've been on here for almost 4 hours talking about some controversial stuff. But, yeah, guys, so I'm actually going to get out of here. It is Father's Day. We have some plans to go over to the in-laws' house and spend some time over there. And, but I much appreciate everybody tuning in. Good conversations. Truly, and I'll be back here tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it'll be a good time. Spicy boy, LOL. Have a good Father's Day, brother. Thank you very much. You as well. All the fathers out there in the chat, have a good Father's Day. Outlawing abortion causes. Well, most abortions are committed by people of color, and so therefore, you can conclude that they're a part of a eugenics program and is racist. So. Yeah, happy Father's Day to you too if you're a father. But all right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Much love. It's been fun chatting. We almost beat the record for the longest stream, but it's all good. So, all right, guys, much love. Have a good time. Peace.